Hello and welcome guys. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy. This is chapter 411. 5 weeks later. Gray could be seen walking on the pathway leading to a big city. Moontown was pretty close to Lapis City, and thanks to the map Klaus's father gave to him, his journey was quite comfortable. He encountered some bandits as well as some magical beasts on the way. But given his current strength, and since Overlord Plane elementalists wouldn't just start popping up from the ground, he dealt with all of them safely. The case of the bandits was quite different since he captured them and dropped them off at the town, not too far from where he fought them. Apparently, these guys had been terrorizing the people of the town as well as traveling merchants. The bandits were immediately executed because they were very brutal when dealing with people. Whenever they would rob, they tend to rape the ladies, and also kill men as well. Gray didn't stand by to get the thanks of the people. After tying the bandits up, he left them to their demise. So none of the people from the town knew he was the one who brought the bandits. He would occasionally encounter some groups of travelers, while some would invite him to join them, especially one which was filled with young ladies. Others would make sure to stay clear of him. With Klaus having the communication device now, his days hadn't been as boring as they previously were. Klaus would always disturb him, leaving multiple messages when he doesn't reply to the first. And the moment he replies, Klaus would immediately start up a conversation, bringing the others into it as well. Other than speaking with the others, he had also been improving his knowledge in arrays and forge mastering. He also started comprehending the elements once again. For a while now, he hadn't really used the chaos space. Other than checking the elemental grades of his elements, he didn't try to comprehend the elements. He had also started training his physical body once again every morning. Looking at the huge gate in front of him, Gray calmed his raging heart and entered. If he could find something like the Resurgence liquid or anything that does the same thing as it in this place, then he would be happy. The sooner he woke Void up, the better. Void is a very important figure to him, not just because he was his companion, but in times of danger, he was among the few people he could truly rely on. The city's gate was crowded with people trying to exit and enter the city. Just like some places Gray had been to, Lapis City didn't take entrance fees. There are guards stationed at the gate, but they were only there to ensure peace. Naturally, wherever there are too many people, conflict is always bound to break out. Gray heard shouts coming from the left side. Turning to look at the source of the sound, he noticed people gathered around an area. He went over there out of curiosity. This was his first time here after all, and he wanted to know what he could about the place. Klaus's father didn't give him much information about this place, only about an auction held towards the end of each month. According to the time he spent coming here, there were 3 weeks left before the said auction. The organization holding the auction was surprisingly the biggest trade organization in the entire continent, the Lens Organization. Walking closer to the crowd, he managed to push past the crowd, getting a better view of what they were looking at. It's him. To think I'd see him here, he thought while looking at one of the figures in the middle of the crowd. Presently, 5 people were in the middle of the crowd. One was standing on one side, facing off against the other 4 people. The 4 had confident smirks on their faces. The single guy, not so confident. The person facing off against these 4 people was surprisingly Jonas. After leaving the trial land, Gray hadn't heard anything about this guy who came from the same city as himself. Jonas inherited the legacy of the expert, so on sensing he was already in the 9th stage of the origin plane, he didn't find it too shocking. Even though he was in the 9th stage, the people surrounding him didn't seem to be pushovers. Of the 4 people, 2 were in the same stage as himself, while 1 was in the 8th stage, with the last one being in the 7th stage. They looked to be in their mid-30s. Gray didn't think that was their real age though, but he didn't really care about it either. Hand it over and we'll settle this thing nicely, one of the men in the 9th stage said coldly. HMPH, according to the deal we made, you guys can keep the main prize, and I get to keep whatever that was left. Jonas snorted coldly, not intimidated by them. Heh, boy, you still haven't grown enough to survive outside of your academies. Here, deals can be broken if you're strong enough, the second man in the 9th stage said. Compared to the first man, this one was already radiating a malicious aura. Clearly, he didn't like the idea of them speaking too much, especially with the increasing crowd. Who knows if someone stronger than them would show up and forcibly take the things they were trying to take from Jonas. Fights are not allowed in the city, This was why they made sure to stop Jonas before he entered the city. Not by the likes of you, Jonas said coldly. He was clearly at a disadvantage, but he didn't care. He wasn't the type that would give up easily. Since there was a chance that he might make it into the city, he wanted to take it. Jonas, just give it to them. It's not worth hurting yourself over it. A young lady who was in the crowd said to him. No, I almost lost my life getting it. I can't hand it to them. Jonas turned to the young lady and said. From their small exchange, Gray guessed they were close. He didn't really know much about Jonas though, so he wasn't going to jump into any conclusions. He was still thinking if he should help him or not. After all, he did help them in the battle against the Darkness Elementalist and his group. If Jonas was able to make it out, then he wouldn't need to make a move. But once he notices that he was in a difficult position, he would step in. Take it. If he refuses, kill him. We can't afford to delay any further. One of the men in the ninth stage said. The crowd quickly retreated a bit further. They naturally didn't want to get hit by the after effects of the battle. The two men in the ninth stage attacked, followed by the other two. One was a wind elementalist while another was an earth elementalist. The man in the 8th stage was a lightning elementalist while the last one was a water elementalist. Jonas steadied himself while watching the people charge towards him. They all sent their attacks towards him, with the wind and lightning elementalists' attacks being the first to get to him. Boom. Jonas made a fire wall in front of him. The wind and lightning attacks smashed into the fire wall, causing a huge explosion. The explosion pushed him back due to the force of the attacks. Two more attacks came right after the explosion, going after Jonas once again. Bam! Bang! Jonas managed to divert one of the attacks, while dodging the other one. The four people charged towards him once again, continuing their attacks. Jonas quickly fell on the defensive. If he were to fight against these people one-on-one, it was obvious he would win, but against all of them at the same time, it was a little too difficult. The chemistry between the four men was quite high, so they were able to give out rounds of well-planned attacks. That would put a well-seasoned fighter in a difficult position. Jonas had managed to continue dodging and averting some of the attacks, but he was still unable to stop all of them. A few minutes later, Jonas could be seen panting heavily, his hands on his knees trying to catch his breath. Boy, I must admit, you're stronger than we thought. Seems like you didn't show your full strength in the expedition, but unfortunately, this is the end for you. One of the men in the 9th stage said to Jonas. He was very impressed with Jonas's performance, but unfortunately, he had to kill him. Gray shook his head and took a step out. He was amazed by Jonas's show of strength, and also the cooperation of the four men. The young lady who previously spoke with Jonas ran out of the crowd, standing in front of Jonas. Chapter 412. Move aside, you'll only make things worse. Jonas shoved the young lady aside, while forcing himself to stand properly. Just hand it over to them, nothing is worth dying for. The young lady said with tears in her eyes. I know, but without this, he'll die. Jonas said, holding onto his shirt tightly, a sad look coming over his face. Even if you hand it over to us, you'll still die, boy. I can't let you live. The Earth Elementalist among the two 9th stage Origin Plane Elementalists said coldly. Jonas was someone who would be able to definitely break through to the Overlord Plane in the future. They, on the other hand, didn't have high hopes in doing so. The thought of a possible Overlord Plane expert holding a grudge against them wasn't something they could afford to allow. He already agreed to give it to you. Why are you people going so far? The young lady looked at the four men with an angry look. You'll die as well. The Earth Elementalist looked at the girl with an evil look. This has nothing to do with her, Jonas said, stepping in front of the young lady. Leave now. I can stop them for a while. No, I can't leave you behind. The young lady said, we're both going to die if we go with your plan. At least in my plan, one person survives. Jonas said, caressing the young lady's face gently. Are you people just going to watch them kill us? The young lady turned to the crowd, hoping that someone would step out to intervene. Unfortunately, reality was cruel. In a world like this, it's much better not to get involved in things that don't have anything to do with you. Sometimes it might be beneficial, but in most cases, one tends to get in trouble because of their help. The crowd just watched what was happening with folded arms. Some were even pointing at Jonas and the young lady. while speaking animatedly, not showing any concerns with if they were about to be killed or not. To them, this was just a show. Stop it. No one would help, Jonas said to the young lady. You think they would help you? Heh, people like you should be killed. In your next life, don't depend on people, the Earth Elementalist said while walking towards them. It would be a shame to kill them, don't you think? A voice stopped the Earth Elementalist on his tracks, trying to find the source of the voice. Jonas stopped dumbstruck. He found the voice familiar, but he couldn't recall where he had heard it before. He hurriedly turned to look in the direction of the sound. Seeing the figure of someone covered in a robe, he couldn't help but get a slight sense of familiarity. Where have I seen this person before? He muttered to himself. Huh, you know that person? The young lady asked, hope shining in his eyes. I think so. I can't recall where I've heard the voice, but I'm sure I recognize it from somewhere, Jonas replied thoughtfully. Gray is currently taller than the last time he saw him, so it wasn't surprising he didn't recognize him, and since they weren't close, there's no way he would know him from his build. Klaus or Reynolds, and probably Alice, would instantly recognize Gray even if he was in a distance. Who are you? Don't you know that you shouldn't involve yourself in things that are not related to you? The wind elementalist among the two in the 9th stage of the origin plane said. Gray didn't stop his movement. He continued walking, heading in Jonas' direction. I'm talking to you, stop there, the wind elementalist said. The reason they hadn't attacked Gray was that they were wary of him. First of all, Gray was wearing a robe, so they couldn't see his face. Not just that, but they also couldn't sense his stage, so they thought he was an expert in the Overlord plane or something. It's been a while. Didn't think I'd see you here, Gray said when he got to where Jonas was standing. Who are you? Jonas asked, looking at Gray curiously. Oh, you wouldn't recognize me with this on, but given my current situation, I don't think it will be wise for me to do that, Gray said mysteriously. But I think you will recall my name. It's Gray. Jonas paused, trying to figure out where he had heard that name before. Within a couple of seconds, it struck him. How could he forget such a memorable name? It was a name that he could never forget. This was the person who didn't have an affinity at the time of his test, then later had an affinity 3 years later. It's you? Jonas asked, stunned. It was almost like he was struck by lightning. How could he not be? This person has been missing for months now. After he left the trial land, he tried to find out about Gray. After all, Gray did let him obtain the inheritance. To be honest, he didn't think he would actually be able to do the same. After joining Gray fight against the Darkness Elementalist and his group, he left. But after coming out, he was curious about how Gray was doing, so he tried to find out about him. He found out that the new mayor and principal of the Lunar Academy was searching for him, possibly with a bad motive, given how he was searching for him. Oh, you remembered me. How nice, Gray said. Why wouldn't I? Jonas asked. Jonas, who is this? The young lady asked curiously. She was one of the few people close to Jonas, so she knew all his friends except for this mysterious one. He's from my hometown, but we aren't really close. We can't even be called acquaintances, Jonas replied. He wasn't close to Gray, so he wouldn't lie that they were friends. Hello, I'm Gray. Gray waved to the young lady. He didn't care if you were to tell the Emperor about him, nor did he care. He would be leaving soon anyway. Also, he didn't think Jonas would let her do that. Gray, wait. You're that Gray from the Lunar Academy, the young lady exclaimed in shock. The one and only, Gray replied. Most of the people from the Starlight Academy usually remember this name because of what happened during the competition. And since his name wasn't something popular, people tend to recall it even after a year. Ho, who the hell are you and what do you want? The Earth Elementalist asked angrily. They watched Gray walk from the crowd and suddenly start speaking with the people they wanted to kill. If not for the fact that they didn't know who he was or how powerful he was, they would have attacked already. I'm a friend. Do you mind letting them go? Gray turned to the 4 men. It wouldn't be nice if he just started fighting against them. Although they were strong, he was confident in being able to at least stop them from harming Jonas, and also escaping from them. If he decides to use all his moves, then he would be able to kill them. The space element was an element none of the people knew about, after all, so once he starts disappearing and popping up from different locations, it would be difficult for them to deal with him. He should hand over the item. The wind elementalist stepped forward to speak. They thought Gray was a powerful expert, so he wanted to let Jonas leave for now, then they would kill him once Gray was gone. Gray rubbed his chin as if thinking. He turned to Jonas. How important is that thing to you? It's worth a friend's life, Jonas replied. Gray looked at him for a while before sighing. Looks like he would have to fight with these people. Sigh, I really hate all these unnecessary hassles. He thought to himself. Can you let him keep the item as well? It's quite important to him. He asked the group. Fortunately, his face was covered, so they couldn't see his embarrassed look. They had already agreed to allow him to leave. Now he was asking them to let him have the item as well. Impossible. What? The Earth Elementalist exclaimed angrily, almost attacking. The Wind Elementalist hastily stepped in front of him. Sir, we can let him leave, but as for the item, we can't. Gray shook his head wryly, a shame. I appreciate your gesture, but you shouldn't fight with them because you want to help me. Jonas tried to stop him. He had fought with the group before and knew how strong they were. He didn't think Gray would be able to defeat them on his own. He inherited the legacy of an expert, so he grew faster than others. He didn't feel Gray is currently stronger than him. At most, they were on par. Don't worry, I can handle it. Gray waved it off. You don't understand, they are very powerful, Jonas said. It's just a breeze, I can handle it. Gray waved again. Jonas looked at him, his heart shattering. Just when he thought he was finally stronger than Gray, he suddenly shows up and says the people he couldn't defeat were a breeze. How annoying was that? Tell him to hand it over, or else, the Wind Elementalist said. Obviously, he was still trying to avoid a fight with someone they didn't know. Chapter 413. Or else what? Gray asked while taking some steps forward. He was currently standing between the four men and Jonas. If they wanted to get to Jonas, then they had to go through him. I'll help. Jonas moved closer to Gray, standing on his left-hand side. No need for that, just head to the city while I hold them back. I'll be able to casually leave them whenever I want, so you don't need to worry about me, Gray said to him. Jonas looked at him. After a few seconds, he nodded his head. He didn't like being indebted to people, but this item was something very important to him, so he couldn't stand to lose it because of his pride. Sometimes, it's best to let go of one's pride in some situations. He retreated to where the young lady was standing, holding her by her hand, and they prepared to walk away. Is it safe to leave him with them? The young lady asked, concerned about Gray's well-being. Even though they weren't friends, she felt since Gray stepped out to help them, she could at least consider him as a friend or an acquaintance. Yeah, these people wouldn't be able to harm him, Jonas said in a matter-of-fact tone. Since you say so, then I won't worry, the young lady said. Where do you think you're going? The Earth Elementalist asked while moving forward to stop them. Boom. A blue flame exploded out, forcing the Earth Elementalist back. If not for the Wind Elementalist acting quickly, then he might have been hurt. You should focus on what's in front of you, Gray said calmly. Everyone looked at Gray in surprise. The strength of his blue flames were insane. Wow, blue flames, the young lady said, clearly awed by it. Yeah, it's quite powerful compared to other flames. It truly is a special flame, Jonas commented. If I recall correctly, he originally had only 2 elements when he was tested. I didn't think about it much when I saw him in the trial land, because we were fighting then, but he thought, confused. Anybody present when Gray did his test would naturally feel amazed and confused at the same time, whenever they see him using the fire element, especially given that it was a special flame, not like the normal one. Jonas recalled Gray didn't use it in the competition, so it meant he most probably got it in the trial land. Just when he thought he got the greatest thing from the trial land, which was the expert's inheritance, Gray suddenly shows up with blue flames. Sigh, comparing oneself with others only makes one feel depressed. I'll just take it as it is, he said to himself. People always tend to compare themselves to people they see as a rival. Seeing your rival growing faster than you could be said to be another form of heartbreak. The best thing to do is take things as they are and try to improve yourself without using others to compare yourself with. That makes you grow better, mentally and emotionally. The 4 men looked at Gray in surprise. Even though they felt Gray was powerful, they didn't think he would actually have such a special flame. This just made things more difficult. Although that attack is powerful, It's not on the level of an Overlord plane expert. The Wind Elementalist deduced. What they were all scared of was Gray being an Overlord plane expert. But his first attack has inadvertently exposed his strength to them. Although he couldn't accurately pinpoint it, they knew it wasn't in the Overlord plane. He's in the Origin plane. The Earth Elementalist asked, still a little shaky from the attack that almost caught him a few seconds ago. If my intuition is correct, then yes. But I can't say I'm 100% sure, since an Overlord plane expert can control the power of their attacks. The Wind Elementalist replied. One could clearly see that he was the brains of the group, thinking things more thoroughly before jumping into action. Try to get him to attack once again. If the attack power is still the same, then we can confirm he's in the Origin plane, he said to the Earth Elementalist. The Earth Elementalist nodded. Compared to the first time, this time he was going to be prepared for the attack. He charged at Gray this time, making sure to keep a considerable distance, while attacking with an earth spear that surrounded Gray from different angles. With the spears coming towards Gray from all directions, it was difficult to block against it for some people, not him. He spread out both hands, and an earth wall rose from the ground surrounding him. The thickness and strength of his earth wall was clearly more superior than the earth spears the Earth Elementalist sent towards them. Bam, bang, bam. They all slammed against the earth wall, but they were unable to even penetrate it, much less causing any harm to Gray who was inside. Attack, he's only in the Origin plane, the Wind Elementalist said to the others. Seeing how Gray blocked the attacks showed that he was still in the Origin plane. There's a special ability Overlord plane experts have that sets them high above Origin plane experts. It's not just the ability to fly, or the superior strength. Instead, it was the special ability known as Rest Elemental Control. Just as the name implies, it's the ability to forcibly seize control over the objects or things an elementalists in the lower planes uses, then use it against them. Take for example the previous situation. Since Gray was also an Earth Elementalist, he wouldn't need to block that attack, rather, he would have forcibly taken control of that attack. Although, this can't be definite since some people can actually fight against this ability of Overlord plane experts. Someone like Gray can easily stop this from happening given his strength and what's in his body. This ability also isn't that easy to use, since it takes a high level of spiritual energy to use it. Some people can use it, but most prefer just easily smashing their weaker opponents to death with their superior strength, hence the lack of use in most cases. Swoosh, bam, boom, bang. With the Wind Elementalist giving the others the go-ahead, they instantly went on the attack, throwing attacks upon attack at Gray. Being someone who is very proficient in one against multiple opponents' battles, Gray relaxed, focusing mainly on defending. Jonas and the young lady looked back when they heard the attacks sounding out. On seeing how calm and collected Gray was while defending and dodging the attacks, they felt less worried about him. The young lady couldn't help but admit it. Gray was the most powerful person in her age range she had seen. Even Jonas, who she thought was very powerful, didn't seem to come close in terms of power. They didn't stop moving, and within a minute, they had already gotten to the city. Since they would be safe once they entered the city, it was the best place to go. Gray, on the other hand, was keeping tabs on them. When he noticed that they had gotten to the city, he relaxed even more. Time to at least hurt one of these guys, then leave, he thought to himself. He had too many hidden cards that he could easily change the tide of any battle whenever he felt like it. For starters, he could easily explode out with his insane speed, catching his opponent off guard, easily hurting or even killing them. Then, there are his inscriptions, which could be said to be one of his best trump cards. And then there's the space element. This element defies the knowledge of the people of the continent, so he could easily use it to kill an entire army, as long as he didn't get exhausted. Since they couldn't trap him, he was planning to use his explosive speed against the Wind or Lightning Elementalist, since they were the ones who were closer and seemed to pose more of a threat, especially the Wind Elementalist. His attacks always put Gray in a difficult situation, making defending against the other attacks hard. Now Gray understood why they were able to easily defeat Jonas, even though he was stronger than them individually. He could even fight against two of them, and still might be able to gain the advantage. But this Wind Elementalist was a calculative fellow, not giving him any chances to attack. Boom, bang, bam, The battle continued with Gray either using the earth or fire element to block their attacks or dodging their attacks by a narrow margin. After dodging a few more attacks, the opportunity Gray was waiting for presented itself before Gray. The Wind Elementalist had gotten within the range where it would be impossible for him to evade the attack, no matter how fast he was. Now he said to himself before disappearing. Chapter 414. Swoosh. Bam. Gray, who suddenly disappeared, soon appeared in front of the Wind Elementalist. He struck out a blow that was covered with blue flames. Crash. Bang. The Wind Elementalist was unable to block the attack, which struck him cleanly on his chest. He was sent flying, crashing into the ground. He bounced off once before hitting a boulder almost 150 meters away from his previous location. Gray was still in a punching position, with his right fist outstretched. The battle ceased. Neither the people fighting against Gray nor the people watching could figure out what just happened. 1 minute Gray was barely dodging attacks. The next minute he suddenly vanished and appeared close to the Wind Elementalist. The Wind Elementalist in turn was sent flying for over 100 meters. How could that happen in the midst of such coordinated attacks from the group of four? Wow, what just happened? The Earth Elementalist asked, stunned. If Gray were to continue his attacks right now, then killing this group would be easy due to them presently losing focus. The Lightning Elementalist charged to where the Wind Elementalist was lying, and on getting there, his expression changed drastically. Blood could be seen gushing out of the mouth of the Wind Elementalist, and his chest seemed to have caved in. The injury on his chest wasn't bleeding as a result of suffering from burns. Cough, cough. The Wind Elementalist coughed out heavily, spitting out a mouthful of blood. His eyes soon rolled to the back, fainting from the pain. Oh, he survived. Looks like he managed to protect his vitals. A shame. Gray shook his head when he noticed the Wind Elementalist was still alive. Given the precision of his attack, he was almost certain that the Wind Elementalist would end up dead. But the Wind Elementalist seemed to have acted quickly, not trying to block the attack, but instead protecting his vitals to make sure he didn't suffer injuries that might kill him. I should take note of this in case I'm ever in a situation like this, Gray thought to himself. This showed how quickly the Wind Elementalist is able to access a situation and come up with a good decision. Most people would try to block or evade the attack, but he didn't, since he knew blocking or evading it was impossible from that range. Jonas and the young lady who were watching from the city gate were dumbfounded by Gray's insane speed. He was literally the fastest person under the Overlord plane that they had seen. They didn't even think there was anyone in the Origin plane who could even catch up to him. With such speed, would anyone at the same stage be able to do anything to him? The answer was no. Jonas shook his head wryly. Luckily, he quickly killed the thought of comparing himself to Gray, or he might have had a breakdown with what just happened. How could anyone compare themselves to such a monster? It was no different than saying they could defeat someone in the Overlord plane, while still being in the Origin plane. Is he really in the Origin plane? The young lady couldn't help but ask. She had seen geniuses in the Origin plane. She was even standing next to one, but compared to Gray, Jonas was like a star in the presence of a moon. How could the difference between people be so huge? What she found more frustrating was that in the presence of others in the Origin plane, Jonas was above most of them. Yeah, I don't think he has broken through to the Overlord plane yet, Jonas replied while nodding. He's fast. The young lady blurted out unconsciously. Yeah, very fast. Jonas concurred with her. It wasn't something anyone could argue anyway. They weren't the only ones speaking about Gray's speed and strength. Most of the people in the crowd were not only speaking about this, but they were also trying to guess his identity. Numerous people come to Lapis City, and because of the auctions held here, some very famous people tend to come from all over the place. Some people guessed he must be from the Royal Academy, while others thought he was a senior to Jonas. That was why he stepped in to help. All in all, they were all talking about the same person, Gray. I'll kill you. The Earth Elementalist instantly lost it when he saw the Wind Elementalist lying on the ground, bloodied from Gray's attack. He charged towards Gray while making multiple Earth spears, sending them towards him. Swoosh, boom, bam. Gray easily dodged all the attacks while sending out attacks of his own. The Earth Elementalist managed to block the first two, but the third flaming arrow broke through his defense, plunging into his shoulder. Ah! He screamed out in pain. holding onto the arm that for some reason the fire arrow didn't die down. Instead, he stayed on as if it was a real arrow. The Earth Elementalist bore the pain and dragged the arrow out of his shoulder, dropping it to the ground. The arrow died down the moment it hit the ground, to the frustration of the Earth Elementalist. Retreat. The Lightning Elementalist was the one who gave the order this time. After saying this, he didn't even stay behind to see if they were following the order. He picked up the Wind Elementalist and charged towards the city gate. He was scared that Gray might target them, since the Wind Elementalist was already hurt. Unexpectedly, Gray didn't even make any attempts to attack them. He focused his attacks on the Earth Elementalist, who stupidly tried attacking him even after he was hit by the fire arrow. Boom, bam, bang. Gray continued exchanging blows with him, easily beating him up. He exploded out with an attack that sent the Earth Elementalist flying. The direction the Earth Elementalist faced was surprisingly the city gate. Damn it, wrong direction, Gray said before chasing after the Earth Elementalist, who was still flying mid-air. Just as the Earth Elementalist was about to get to the city gate, Jonas stepped out from the city and attacked with a huge sea of flames. The flames soon got to where the Earth Elementalist was, and just before it engulfed him, a silver light flashed and the Earth Elementalist disappeared, appearing inside the city alongside the Lightning Elementalist. What are you people doing? He just attacked while in the city. The Lightning Elementalist turned to the guards at the gate and yelled, "He's not in the city." The guard answered before turning to look in another direction, not bothering with the Lightning Elementalist anymore. How? He's not in the city, look. The Water Elementalist pointed at where Jonas was standing, and it was just like the guard said, he wasn't in the city. Jonas was just 2 steps outside the city gate, so there was no way he broke the rules of the city. Gray quickly appeared before Jonas, who had already withdrawn the sea of fire. "Sigh, I completely forgot about this direction," he said while shaking his head ruefully. "It's okay, at least 2 of them are seriously wounded," Jonas replied. "Yeah, that's a plus, I guess," Gray said with a shrug. He would normally want to kill these people, but since they had already entered the city, then he would find a way to do it later. "I should have used the darkness element to corrode their insides," Gray thought, still feeling bad that he was unable to kill the group. Seeing how disappointed Gray seemed to be, Jonas didn't know how to feel. These were the same 4 people that were on the verge of killing him. Against Gray, they had to run for their lives, yet he was disappointed he was unable to kill any one of them. "Let's head in," Jonas said, inviting Gray inside the city. "Sure," Gray replied before following behind Jonas. The people who were gathered outside the city gate soon started going in their respective directions. The ones who wanted to enter the city faced the city gate, while the ones who wanted to leave went in the other direction. When Gray got to where the Earth Elementalist was lying, he looked at him for some time, while shaking his head repeatedly and muttering the word, "a shame." The Earth Elementalist was still conscious, unlike the Wind Elementalist, so on seeing Gray mocking him in this manner, he lost his temper. But unfortunately, he was unable to stand up since when he was fighting with Gray, Gray used arrows to hit each of his limbs. "I'll get you next time," he uttered with much difficulty. "Heh, if not for your friends, you'd be dead already," Gray remarked before walking away with Jonas. The Earth Elementalist clenched his fist tightly, but he couldn't do anything since there was no way he could stand, much less attack Gray. The young lady looked at Gray in awe. His personality was completely different compared to others. She chased after them to catch up with Jonas, holding onto his hand as they walked further into the city. The city was busy, even more so than the capital city. Gray guessed it had to do with the location of this place, and also the frequent auctions that take place. Most people would be able to find what they're searching for if they come here. Some would just like Gray, hoping to find what they were searching for. Chapter 415. Lapis City. In an inn. "So, what brings you to this city?" Jonas asked Gray after they sat down on their table. "Nothing much, I was curious, so I came to play," Gray replied offhandedly. Jonas drew closer to him. "You know that you're being hunted down, right?" "Oh, how did you know about that?" Gray asked, surprised that Jonas would know of such vital information. According to his understanding, the Emperor is trying to hide this news as much as possible, so the families in the Empire wouldn't be aware of what Gray obtained from the trial land. "I have my ways," Jonas replied. "Well then, since you know about that, I presume others from your academy do as well?" Gray asked. I'm not sure. I only got to find out due to a coincidence. Jonas shook his head. He didn't think others would know about this. But he wasn't sure, so he couldn't tell for sure. Okay. Anyway, I'm not bothered about that though. I'll leave as soon as I'm done here. And besides, you're the only one who knows about my appearance here, Gray said nonchalantly. Oh, and your friend too, he added. You can be rest assured, I won't betray you, Jonas said. I'm not scared about that. If I were, I wouldn't step out to help you. Even if I do decide to step out, I'll just conceal my identity, Gray said. The young lady watched the duo as they were speaking. They weren't talking loudly, only audible enough for them to hear, so she didn't know what they were speaking about. She only saw Gray raise his head to look at her once. Okay then. Jonas nodded after they finished their conversation. So, what brings you to Lapis City? Gray was the one who asked this time. Well, a friend of mine. Jonas told Gray the reason for his coming to this city. According to him, the academy sent them on a mission. Since he was presently the strongest student in the academy, he was sent alongside 2 of his friends to come and clear an area. The young lady was one of the people sent with him. The other one was poison ? After walking into a chasm. Jonas took it upon himself to find a cure for him, and since where they were assigned wasn't far from Lapis City, he decided to come here and try his luck. He was unable to get anything, so he decided to follow a team that was heading into the magical beast forest to search for a treasure that could cure him. The main reason he followed the group was because he heard them speaking of something like that. After following them on the expedition, the group made a deal with him to collect the main items, while he took what was left. When they got to their destination, he helped with fighting against the beasts there, and the group managed to acquire what they wanted. He was also fortunate enough to get something that might cure his friend. On his way out of the cave, he sensed something and went deeper into the cave. Lying inside was a 22 meters long giant snake. Beside it was one of the best plants used for making the highest tier of healing tonic. He decided to risk his life to get the plane, since the giant snake was already in the overlord plane. During the first phase of his attempt, he was successful, but on trying to escape with the plant, the snake woke up. It naturally attacked, almost killing him in the process. The group of 4 who were outside saw him struggling against the snake, but did nothing to help. When they saw what he acquired, they were overcome by greed and wanted to obtain it. Jonas luckily escaped from the snake, but was met with another problem. The people he came to the expedition with. He tried escaping, but was blocked. The snake came out of the cave and started attacking them. Jonas used the opportunity to escape from the clutches of the group. Unfortunately, he was unable to get to the city before they caught up to him. Apparently, the snake didn't kill the group. It was just like in his situation as well. The snake didn't kill him. You should know the story from there, Jonas said after getting to the part where the group held him outside the city. Yeah, Gray nodded. He looked around and noticing that the inn wasn't filled with people anymore, he decided to take off the robe that was hiding his face. Ah, finally, I can eat in peace, Gray exclaimed before digging into the food. When Gray removed his robe, his face appeared in front of Jonas and the young lady for the first time. They both froze, staring at that seemingly otherworldly face. Even Jonas, who had seen him before, was a little taken aback. Gray was more handsome than he previously was. The young lady, on the other hand, couldn't believe that a guy could be this handsome. He's even more handsome than what they said, she thought to herself. Her mouth opened, forming a small O. But they snapped out of their stunned state when Gray dug into his food. He wasn't eating particularly fast, but he wasn't eating slow either. Luckily, he wasn't talking while eating. Some time passed and Gray finally finished eating. What the young lady found astonishing wasn't the fact that Gray ate too much. It was the fact that Gray completely forgot about them while he was eating. He didn't even raise his head once to look at them. If not for his handsome face and his unimaginable strength, she would have thought that he was a beggar. Okay, thanks for treating me to a meal. I haven't had a good meal since leaving Frost City, Gray said after he was done eating. He stood up immediately, preparing to leave. He wasn't close to Jonas, so there wasn't really any reason to stay behind. Oh, okay. Thanks for your help today. I'll try my best to make it up to you. Jonas thanked him for his help, It's nothing. See you next time. I'll be leaving now. Gray waved at the duo and left the inn with his robe covering his face once again. He didn't want to stay in this inn. It was too far from the city gate. He planned to explore the city, going to the inn that was closest to the city gate. After finding an inn, he would think of what to do next. It took him about 30 minutes or so before he found an inn he was comfortable with. The inn was around 200 meters away from the city gate and around 50 meters away from the city walls. Gray's room. After getting into the room, the first thing Gray did was to take a bath. Although he usually takes baths in the forest, he still preferred this one more. When he was done with his bath, he started thinking of his next move. There's still about 3 weeks left or so before the month ends. Staying idle wouldn't work for me. But if I were to go into the magical beasts forest now, something might come up that would make me miss the auction. He thought of every possible action, and before long, he came up with a plan. Since the Lens organization were the ones holding the auction, he would try to get Old Man Gerald to ask if there would be something that has the same effects as the resurgence liquid. If by chance they do, then he would use his influence to keep for himself. Of course, he would compensate the person who brought the item to the auction. With a plan in mind, he quickly brought out the communication device that was given to him by Old Man Gerald and sent him a message. The contents of the message was simple. He should help him find out if there were any items that had effects similar to the resurgence liquid. Although he knew it was still too early to ask, since some people might have already dropped the item they wanted to be auctioned off, he felt that there might be a chance. Old Man Gerald quickly asked the people at the auction house according to Gray's request, but unfortunately, there was nothing of such in the place. I've told them to notify me if anything like that shows up, so you don't need to worry. Just make yourself available when the time comes. Old Man Gerald's voice resounded in Gray's head. Okay, thanks for helping me once again. Gray thanked him before keeping the device. Now, he knew he could get the item, as long as it appeared in the auction house. With that out of the way, I think I should at least explore the outer perimeters of the magical beasts forest before then, he thought to himself. Chapter 416. The next day, 3 kilometers west of Lapis City, Gray stood in front of the majestic magical beasts forest, looking at the lush greenery and overly large trees. Compared to what was in other forests, he felt nothing but awe. This was the second time he was seeing the magical beasts forest, and the feeling was just like the first time he saw it. Even when standing outside the forest, he could feel the intimidating aura of the magical beasts that reside in the forest. He could also hear the roars from the magical beasts in the forest. Phew. He took in a deep breath before breathing out. With that, he stepped into the forest. Roar. A cat-like beast which was around the size of a Maine cat jumped out from the side of a tree as soon as Gray stepped into the forest. Sigh to think it's a cat, he said after catching the cat with his bare hands. While standing outside, he had already sensed the beast, but he never thought it was a cat. From what he could sense, it was a wind elementalist, so it excelled in speed. I won't kill you since you're a cat-like void, although you're way bigger than he is, Gray said before throwing the cat in the other direction. What he found more amusing was the fact that the cat was actually still in the early stages of the fusion plane, or using Void's way of ranking, a rank 2 magical beast, yet it dared to try to sneak attack him, who was almost at the peak of the origin plane. 2 hours later, Gray had ventured almost 2 kilometers into the magical beast forest, and a magical beast would appear within every 10 minutes or so. But all of the beasts are still in the fusion plane. According to the reports he heard, once he gets past the 2 kilometers mark, then the strength of the beasts would increase. He had already started to notice it because the beasts he had been encountering are in the late stages of the fusion plane. I'll head in a little more. Gray doesn't want to spend too much time here, but his curiosity towards this place is pushing him to go further inside. The space element made it difficult for the beasts to sense him. Most of the ones which attacked him only attacked when he got within their line of view. So far, he hadn't killed any of them. He would usually avoid the beasts whenever he could. The ones he couldn't avoid, he would just smack them away, but wouldn't kill them. 3 hours later, Gray had gone over 5 kilometers into the forest, almost getting to the 6 kilometers mark. And surprisingly, people still called this place the outer perimeters of the magical beasts forest. from the map he got from Lapis City only after going past the 6 kilometers mark. Will he leave the outer perimeters of the forest? Not just that, but that's also when he would start seeing beasts in the origin plane. Some minutes later, if the map is correct, then going further would mean leaving the outer perimeters of the magical beasts forest. Gray brought out the map from his storage ring, looking at the map. Forget it. There's still just over 3 weeks before the auction. I'd better go in and see if I can find the bamboo forest that guy spoke of. He continued walking further into the forest. In the time he had been here, he had surprisingly not encountered any person. Since this was the outer perimeters, he guessed this was the part he would see people frequently, but he didn't encounter anyone. After walking for almost an hour, he still didn't encounter any beasts in the origin plane, but he encountered those at the peak of the arcane plane. He decided to rest under a tree, since he had been walking non-stop for hours now. Just as he sat down, roar, he heard the scream of a lady and a magical beast roar. He turned to look in the direction with a raised brow. After looking in the direction for some seconds, he turned away and closed his eyes to meditate. Although he was bored, he didn't have the habit of interfering with people that didn't have anything to do with him. Anyone who entered this place should naturally be prepared for the dangers they would face. They don't expect that someone would help them whenever they are in danger. Roar, bang. Why is the sound getting louder? He asked himself while looking in the direction of the noise. Of course, he knew the answer to his question, but he just didn't expect that something like this would happen. He wanted to stand up and go in the other direction, but his curiosity, as well as the boredom of not doing anything since he entered this place, made him stay. Besides, there's also the possibility of the battle not getting to where he is. 2 minutes later, is it a coincidence? Or do they know that someone is here? He thought to himself. The sound was already very close, and from his calculations, the person who was being attacked by a magical beast would appear before him within the next minute or so. Just as he calculated, the person soon appeared before him. The person was surprisingly a young man. I could swear I heard a young lady's voice, Gray thought to himself, stunned. Maybe the beast has killed her, he thought again. The young man who was running for help had despair written all over his face. When he looked ahead of him, he saw someone who was wearing a robe. He didn't even stand to think if the person was good or not. He ran in the direction while screaming for help. Help! Help! Please! He yelled at the top of his lungs while charging in Gray's direction. This is totally unexpected! Gray exclaimed in shock. Yes, he heard the young man, but he didn't even know if he could call him a young man or not. The young man spoke, but for some reason, he was hearing the voice of a lady. Chapter 417. Help! Help! The young man continued screaming as he ran frantically in Gray's direction. Weird, but it's not really unacceptable though, Gray thought, while looking at the young man who had the voice of a lady. What Gray found more amusing was that the young man clearly had a masculine look with beards, and a slightly well-built body, but his voice was feminine, which was in contrast with his appearance. This was something that rarely happened, but it doesn't mean it doesn't. At first, he found it amusing since he hadn't really been in contact with someone like this. But after hearing it a few more times, he just shrugged it off. After all, everyone isn't supposed to be the same. He stood up, took a single step forward, and vanished. The young man who was running in Gray's direction instantly freaked out when he saw him disappear. He almost wanted to shed tears, but he had to save his energy for running. Crying while running would just make him expend more energy. Well, so he thought. Boom. He suddenly heard a loud explosion behind him, but he didn't turn around immediately. Instead, he advanced forward. He continued running. Gray couldn't help but comment with a surprised expression when he looked at the back of the running young man. After running a few more meters and not hearing the sound of the magical beast behind him, the young man halted, turned around sharply to see what was happening. To his surprise, the person who was wearing a robe was standing in the direction he was coming from, and the bear which was chasing after him was lying on the ground, motionless, around 20 meters away from him. You defeated it? The young man asked anxiously. Well, do you see anyone else here? Gray asked before walking back to the tree he was previously sitting under. Sorry. The young man scratched his head awkwardly. Thank you for lending me a hand. He bowed to Gray as a sign of gratitude. It's okay. The noise was disturbing my peace. Gray waved his hand nonchalantly before sitting down once again under the tree. Oh, I'm sorry for that. The young man apologized for disturbing him. Gray didn't reply and closed his eyes once again to meditate. He didn't really like interacting with people much, especially with people he didn't know. Can I sit with you? The young man asked. Gray didn't reply, staying in the same position. The young man looked at Gray and felt like he was an old expert who didn't like speaking much. In fact, the more he interacted with Gray, the more he felt like he was an old expert who wasn't bothered with things of the outside world. The beast which was chasing after him was in the early stages of the origin plane, yet Gray defeated it with a single attack. Not just that, but Gray's speed was insane. This person is definitely an overlord plane expert, the young man said in his heart. After standing for a few minutes and not getting any reply, he sat down close to Gray. Gray originally thought the young man would leave, but to his surprise, he sat close to him. What do you want? He couldn't help but ask when the young man sat down. Hello, I'm Ellis. I traveled into the magical beast's forest to train. Ellis suddenly started telling Gray of the reason he came into the magical beast's forest, not forgetting to speak of the ordeals he had gone through. Wait, what does that have to do with what I asked? Gray hurriedly tried to stop him from speaking. Oh, I'm sorry about that. Ellis apologized. So, what are you doing here? He asked immediately after apologizing. Gray looked at Ellis, confused. Doesn't he get it that I don't want him here? He thought while looking at him. He didn't want to outright chase Ellis away, but from how he continued speaking, he felt it wouldn't really be bad to chase him away. After seeing that Gray didn't answer his question, Ellis continued speaking again, telling him of how he encountered this bear that was chasing him. As much as the time Gray had on his hand right now, he didn't have the time to listen to the story of a complete stranger. Even if he wanted to waste it, this wasn't what he wanted to waste it on. The bamboo forest was quite large and... You're disturbing me. Gray's annoyed voice interrupted him. I'm sorry, Senior. Ellis quickly apologized. Senior? Gray asked, surprised. Looks like Senior doesn't like it when someone calls him a senior, Ellis thought to himself. No, what I meant was that I wanted to thank you for your help, Ellis said. Ellis stood up after saying this, just as he was about to leave. Wait, Gray called out. Yes, Senior. Ellis turned around quickly, almost bumping into Gray who was still sitting. His enthusiastic reaction stunned the hell out of Gray. Who's he calling Senior? This guy is at least 5 years older than I am. Gray thought in annoyance. First of all, I'm not a senior. Then, what is this bamboo forest you're speaking of? Gray said to clear up the confusion. The only reason he wasn't telling Ellis his name was because he was being hunted down by the Emperor, and from how Ellis interacted with him, he could tell he was someone who liked talking a lot. There's a high chance Ellis would speak of this experience to people he didn't even know. How could someone who speaks this much still be alive in a place like this, where people betray each other? Gray couldn't help but wonder. Oh, the bamboo forest. It's just a few kilometers away from here. I still remember the road there. Ellis replied enthusiastically. You don't need to go. Just point out its location on the map for me, Gray said, before taking out the map he had of the magical beasts forest. Chapter 418. Oh, okay. Ellis replied a little downcast. But in the end, he still pointed the spot out for him on the map. Since he could be of assistance to this senior who helped him, he would do it well. Is it the same place? Gray thought to himself while looking at the map properly. The magical beasts forest was huge, so there was no way there would be only one bamboo forest. But hearing about a bamboo forest, he couldn't help but get his hopes up, even if not by much. But at least he had to check it out. Thank you. Perchance, do you know of any other bamboo forests in the magical beasts forest? Gray asked. Since Ellis speaks a lot, then he should be able to know some things about this place. Who knows, he might just know the location of another one. No, Senior, I only saw this one by chance. The area the bamboo is growing is not really large, around 300 to 400 meters I think, but according to rumors, there tend to be treasures in places like that. Ellis replied. Okay, thank you for your information. I'll be going then, Gray said before turning around. Senior, can I come with you? Ellis asked nervously. No, Gray replied decisively. But there's something there I want," Ellis pleaded. Gray stopped and looked at him. After thinking about it for a while, he decided to let him travel with him. The reason for this was simple. He was clueless about the magical beast's forest, and Ellis seems to know a thing or two. Not just that, but he was also the one who showed him where the bamboo forest was located. As long as he isn't looking for what I need, then we're okay, Gray thought as he gave Ellis a nod of approval. "Thank you, Senior," Ellis exclaimed happily. "I'm not a senior, call me Zeke," Gray said. This was the alias he had previously used, since he was in a place where he didn't want to use his real name. Then he didn't mind using the same name once again. Frost City was hundreds of kilometers away from here, so the chances of people who knew Zeke Hoover appearing here was slim. Okay, Senior Zeke," Ellis nodded with a little uncertainty. "This is going to be a long journey," Gray muttered as the duo started the journey to where the bamboo forest was located. As they were walking, Ellis would speak about the different places they passed through. He would also occasionally speak of his travels in the magical beast's forest. To Gray's surprise, Ellis had been coming to this place since he was in the fusion plane. The fact that Ellis was still alive still surprises him. From some of Ellis's stories, he spoke of times when he was betrayed by the people he was traveling with. "Then why are you following me this freely?" Gray couldn't help but ask. People who are betrayed more than once usually find it difficult to trust people close to them, much less a complete stranger. Maybe I'm just too naive, or maybe I'm stupid. But for some reason, I've never given up on people, Ellis replied after a few seconds of silence. "I'll take the first two. The third is crap," Gray replied with an apathetic voice. He felt it was more preferable to believe that Ellis was naive and stupid than what he said about not giving up on people. "It's okay, only a few people have agreed with me," Ellis said with a smile. "Where are they?" Gray asked. Why don't we forget about that?" Ellis asked after hesitating. "They're dead, right?" Gray asked, looking straight at Ellis. Ellis sighed softly before nodding. "And you still believe in people? Looks like you're only alive because you're lucky." Gray scoffed and walked away. "But all the times I've been saved, the same people you say I shouldn't believe in are the ones who always come to my rescue whenever I'm in a life and death situation, especially in here," Ellis said while walking after Gray. You do have a point there," Gray replied, before muttering under his breath, "I should have let him die." "What?" Ellis asked. "Nothing," Gray said. "I could swear I heard you say you should have let me die," Ellis said. "You're wrong, I didn't," Gray replied with a straight face. His voice didn't even waver. If one didn't know otherwise, they would think he wasn't lying. But Ellis didn't want to accept it. But Gray gave him deaf ears, so he was forced to stop speaking about it. "Wait, all the people who save you, are they men?" Gray suddenly thought of something and asked. "Yeah, why do you ask?" Ellis nodded before asking. No wonder. Don't believe in people. That's all I can tell you. Other than close friends, don't trust anyone else easily," Gray replied. Looks like his voice is actually more of a blessing. Those stupid people who would think he is a lady and would always try to rescue the beauty in distress. Unfortunately for them, they will always get the surprise of their lives. Gray shook his head as he thought of why Ellis was always saved whenever he was in trouble. When he first heard Ellis's screaming for help, he also thought he was a young lady. Of course, he wasn't like those stupid guys who ran towards him. Had Ellis not come in his direction, he wouldn't have helped him in any way. The duo continued walking with Ellis speaking almost non-stop throughout the time. Gray almost had the urge to block his ears. How could someone talk this much? Damn it. This guy's almost as annoying as Klaus. This was the only thing in Gray's head throughout their journey. Gray was forced to increase his speed so they could get to the bamboo forest sooner rather than later. Chapter 419. We should be getting close. I remember this place, Ellis said excitedly as they got close to a swamp. Yeah, according to the map, if we continue heading in this direction, we would get there in about 30 minutes or so, Gray replied after looking at the map. He took a look at the swamp in front of them before shaking his head. Unfortunately, we'll be going around it, Gray added. Why? Going around would take at least another 2 hours, Ellis asked confused. Did you go through here the last time? Gray asked. Yes, Senior Zeke, Ellis nodded. It's because they didn't perceive you as a threat. Although I can't be sure they'll be able to sense me. I don't like taking unnecessary risks. Gray mumbled. Who's they? Ellis asked nervously. Oh, there are 2 Overlord Plane beasts in this swamp. It's weird since they shouldn't be in this region. Gray replied nonchalantly. What? Ellis exclaimed, sweating furiously. He passed through this place when he was exploring previously. Even when he was running away from the bear, he passed this place as well. Now, Gray was telling him there was an Overlord Plane beast here, and it's not 1 but rather 2. I almost died, he thought in horror. Let's move, there's unrest in the swamp. Gray retreated, before turning in the other direction. Yes, Senior, Ellis yelled before rushing after Gray, fearing to stay even 2 meters away from him. One has to remember that he was almost killed by a bear in the early stages of the origin plane. There's no contest once an Overlord Plane beast appears. It will kill him with a single smack. Gray found the appearance of the Overlord Plane beast quite strange. Although it was impossible, it was quite rare that the beasts would come this far out. According to what he had heard about this place, the essence energy in the magical beast forest increases the deeper one goes in. He could already confirm it, since he had already noticed the difference in the essence here, compared to the outer perimeters. The Overlord Plane beasts always stay in the deeper parts of the forest or around there, since the essence would make them improve faster. 1 hour later. Is something going on? Gray raised a brow as he stared ahead of them. He could sense the aura of yet another Overlord Plane beast. Finding the first was already strange enough, yet he had sensed another one. What's it, Senior? Ellis asked, scared. I've told you to stop calling me Senior, my name's Zeke, Gray said while rubbing his head, a little frustrated. Okay, Senior. Ellis nodded. Fuck. You know what, suit yourself. There's an Overlord Plane beast ahead of us. Gray gave up on Ellis. He could call him whatever he liked. He didn't care anymore. Another one? Ellis asked, visibly shaking. Gray threw a glance in his direction, not expecting he was such an easily frightened person. Usually, all the people who come to the magical beasts forest are mostly fearless. Ellis was the person with the weakest resolve he had ever seen. Yes, we'll have to take a detour again. Gray nodded. If there are more Overlord Plane beasts, then something is definitely going on around this place, or in the deeper parts of the magical beasts forest. That made them come this far out. No matter what it is, getting involved with this strength of mine isn't a good idea. He thought to himself. It's just like when they went to the Chimera forest. The increase in beasts of the lightning element increased exponentially as they drew closer to the lightning tree. There might be a chance that there's something out here that drew the attention of these beasts. The second possibility is that something major is happening in the deeper parts of the magical beasts forest. That scared these beasts away. Sage Plane beasts are rumored to be in the deepest parts of the magical beasts forest. This is why it's still under the control of magical beasts, even though there are tons of treasures here that are beneficial to humans. The duo once again took a detour, and after 4 hours and taking 2 more detours, they finally got to their location. Gray stood in front of the bamboo forest, looking at the bamboos. Hopefully, it's here. If not, I'll have to continue exploring the forest, he thought to himself. Just as he took a step inside, he hastily retreated and shoved Ellis to the side. Bang! The ground exploded, sending debris and bamboo shoots everywhere. Gray waved his hand and an earth wall appeared in front of him, blocking the debris and bamboo shoots coming in his direction. Ellis, on the other hand, had no idea what was going on, but on seeing the bamboo shoots coming towards him, he hastily set a water sphere around him that stopped the bamboo shoots and debris. What was that? He asked while looking around nervously. Gray looked around before furrowing his brows. He didn't sense anything until the last moment when they were attacked. This meant whatever was hiding was very good at concealing itself. There's also the possibility that it was a person, but he was more inclined to believe it was an attack from a beast. Whatever it is, it will surely attack again. He squinted his eyes. He had tried to feel the vibration of the earth since the attack looked like what came from underground, but he was unable to get anything. Gray and Ellis increased their vigilance, awaiting the next time the beast attacked again. Gray was looking around while closely monitoring the vibrations of the ground. He was able to sense the vibration the last time. This was what enabled him to dodge the attack. Ellis scurried over to where Gray was standing, Unlike him, he didn't even sense anything. So standing on his own was no different from inviting death. Just as he was about to get close to Gray, "Get back," Gray yelled. Huh! Ellis panicked and immediately tried retreating. Unfortunately, he was a tad too slow and was caught in the attack. Boom. Chapter 420. Boom. Ellis's feminine voice rang out in all directions. Gray couldn't confirm if the attack was fatal on him or not, but since they were together, he hurried there to check if he was okay. I'm going to die. On getting there, Gray was lost for words. Other than the small scratch on his leg, he was perfectly fine. Yet he screamed like someone who was not only fatally injured, but it had been confirmed that he wouldn't make it. What the hell are you saying? Gray couldn't help but ask, his hand massaging his temples. Wait, I'm still alive. I thought I would die, Ellis said with tears in his eyes. If you continue lying there, I think you just might be, Gray said in an apathetic voice. Ellis shivered on hearing what Gray said and hastily stood up. On seeing how he stood up with such speed, Gray heaved a sigh. An injured companion is nothing more than dead weight in this place, especially given their current situation and the sudden increase of the overlord plane beasts in the area. Thank you for warning me in time, Ellis said after standing up. Although he was still slightly shaking from the fear, he should be fine. It wouldn't be nice to see you die, so there's that, Gray said. He held his chin before continuing. From the two attacks, we can ascertain that the attacks are coming from underground, and that whatever is attacking us is an Earth elementalist, and an expert in concealing themselves. Is there a way to defeat it? Ellis asked. Of course, Gray replied. Oh, that's good. Ellis sighed in relief before asking, so, how do we defeat it? I don't know, Gray replied with a casual shrug. What? Ellis almost fainted. I don't know how to defeat it, Gray said with the same nonchalant tone. But you said there's a way to defeat it, Ellis stuttered. Yes, there's always a way to defeat any opponent. I just don't know how to defeat this one, Gray replied while placing his hand on the ground. It's no good, I still can't sense the vibration, he thought to himself. Doesn't that mean we're dead? Ellis asked with horror. No, I can probably escape easily from it. You, on the other hand, not so sure, Gray replied in a straightforward manner. I don't want to die. You can defeat it, Senior. Ellis went pale from fright. He fell down and hugged Gray's legs, begging him with tears flowing from his eyes. I can defeat it, I think, but I don't have a way now, Gray said while pushing Ellis away from his legs. Ellis held onto his legs with his life to him. Gray's legs were currently the safest place to be. Damn it. Let go of me and jump to the other side, Gray said before leaping into the air. Ellis looked at his left and right before jumping once again. Unfortunately, he was a bit too slow again. His scream echoed around once again, but when Gray looked at him, he couldn't help but be surprised. How is he able to always dodge it even when he's already caught in the attack? He asked himself confused. He was still mid-air, so he saw the scene of Ellis being caught in the attack, but escaping only by a hair's breadth. Forget about that for now, attack. He pushed the thought of how Ellis escaped to the back of his head. Since he was above the attack of the beast, this was the perfect time to counterattack. Swoosh. His blue flames lit up the sky before a large fire snake came crashing into the place where the attack of the beast previously came from. Bang. A larger explosion rang out, scaring the hell out of Ellis. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. Ellis screamed as he ran away from the range of the after effect of the attack. Whoosh. A strong wind current suddenly blew around the forest, quickly blowing away the flames from the ground. Gray was still mid-air during this time. When he looked at the place of the explosion, he saw something furry burrowing into the ground. A tail, he mumbled. He saw what looked like the tail of a rat, but he wasn't too sure since he only saw it within a second. I shouldn't be wrong. We'll have to draw it out again, he thought to himself before descending. Ellis was blown away by the unexpected wind current, and he crashed almost 20 meters away. Senior, you almost killed them, he complained as soon as Gray landed not too far from him. That was the only chance I had to attack. If I didn't wait a little further because of you, I would have had it, Gray replied. He didn't attack quickly because there was no way Ellis would have been able to escape from the attack range given the short time. Are you sure? Ellis asked suspiciously. Yes. Now we just need you to act as bait to bring it out once again. I still can't track it, so the only way to get it is when it comes out to attack," Gray said, smiling mischievously. Unfortunately, Ellis is unable to see his devilish expression. "Oh, that's easy." Ellis waved it off. "That's unexpected," Grays mumbled to himself, not expecting Ellis to accept immediately. "Wait, what?" Ellis suddenly screamed after a few seconds. It was as if it was only after a while did he figure out what Gray said. "You bait me hide," Gray said while pointing at Ellis, then at himself. "What do you mean you bait me hide? You just want to kill me," Ellis exclaimed, frightened. "Can you attack it?" Gray asked with a nonchalant tone. No, but I still won't accept to be bait," Ellis said with resolve. "It doesn't change anything though. Since we're already here, it wouldn't allow us to leave." "Well, I can escape, you." "Not so sure," Gray said. "You." Ellis's eyes widened in fright. "Don't worry, I won't let you die," Gray reassured. Chapter 421. "You better be telling the truth, or else my death will be on your head." Ellis finally decided to trust Gray since he said he wouldn't let him die, although he didn't really agree on his free will. If not for Gray saying the chances of him escaping was low, then he would have run away by now. Gray nodded before moving a few meters away. "Walk around. From what I've seen, it seems to only attack after sensing movements," he said to Ellis. Ellis gulped in fright, shaking a little from the fear. He looked at the distance between himself and Gray and started moving in his direction. Since the beast would be able to attack when he's moving, then it didn't matter what direction he faced. Besides, the closer he is to Gray, the safer he feels. While walking in Gray's direction, he noticed how serious he was. This reassured him that Gray was throwing his life away. Now, Ellis suddenly heard Gray's voice, but Gray was nowhere to be seen. Without delaying any further, he hastily dived forward, moving away from where he was standing. Boom, bang. 2 attacks rang out in the same place, at almost the same time, but the second one was only a second slower than the first attack. Ellis was sensible enough to create a water sphere to protect him from the after effects of the attacks. Swoosh, bam. Another attack shot into the dust that was still in the process of rising completely. The sound of the attack hitting something rang out. Crash, bang. A slightly large shadow flew out of the dust, crashing into the ground. A smaller shadow shot out of the dust very quickly, heading in the direction that the first shadow crashed. Boom, bam, bang. Gray immediately released a barrage of attacks on the shadow that first came out. He hadn't gotten a proper view of it, but what was important was immobilizing it. Squeak, rumble, boom. A large rumbling sound resonated after the creation squeaked loudly, but it was followed by another attack from Gray. Squeal. The beast squealed in pain. On hearing the squeal, Gray suddenly froze, recalling a treacherous bunny he saw in the trial land. Crap, I hate these things, he exclaimed. Although he said hate, one could actually sense a little bit of fear in his voice. The dust soon died down, and the beast appeared in Gray and Ellis's view. A mole, Ellis said while looking at the mole, which was still squealing in pain. Gray heaved a sigh of relief. Although he had seen the tail of a rat-like creature previously, he still had a terrible fright when he heard it squealing. For some reason, Gray actually has a built-in fear of bunnies. Since his last encounter with that particular bunny, it's surprising how he was afraid of all bunnies because of one. So, this is what has been trying to kill me. Gem PH. I want to see how it can try that with Senior around. Ellis walked closer to the mole and kicked it. Squeak. It squeaked loudly. The squeaking sound terrified Ellis since he was very close to it, and he quickly retreated to a location he deemed to be safe, which was behind Gray. Gray didn't speak much, shaking his head as he walked towards the mole. From how the mole was acting, he could tell it was injured, since it hadn't tried to dig back into the ground. There was also a few injuries around its body as well. It's only in the late stages of the origin plane. We were lucky. Had it been in the Overlord plane, then Ellis truly might die, he thought inside. This was what he found worrying about the issue previously. Since he couldn't sense the mole, there was no way he knew what stage it was in. If it were to be in the Overlord plane, then things would have been different. I have no use for the core. He raised his head to look at Ellis. Do you want its core? He pointed at the mole. Ellis froze, not expecting Gray to ask him such a question. Most people come to the magical beasts forest to acquire beasts' calls. Since they were quite valuable, no one would want to give them away. I can let it go if you don't want it. Gray, when he saw the unresponding Ellis. No, I mean, yes, I want it. Ellis hurriedly rushed over. He could tell the beast was at least in the mid-stages of the origin plane. If he is able to sell this in Lapis City, he would earn quite a sum. Even if it isn't as important as the core of an Overlord plane beast, it was still important. Gray nodded before moving in hand quickly. The mole squealed loudly before it finally stopped moving. He opened the space in its head so Ellis could remove the core. It's a late-stage origin plane beast, so you should know how much it sells. Gray explained. Thank you, Senior, Ellis said in excitement. It's nothing, you were the one who agreed to be the bait, so you deserve it. Gray waved it off. Although he would need the cores of beasts for forge mastering, he didn't want to start with these ones. He planned to obtain some cores on his way out of here. Then he would shut himself out and start practicing his forge mastering. Presently, he only had theoretical knowledge of it, and not enough practical knowledge. Other than the time in the academy, he hadn't tried doing anything that had to do with forging again. We should head in. Gray turned to the bamboo forest. This was the reason he came here. Hopefully, he could find a pond here. Only now did he realize he was naive when negotiating with the young man back at the Chimera Forest. He didn't ask him which part of the magical beasts forest the pond was located, and neither did the young man bother to tell him. Chapter 422. Gray and Ellis entered the bamboo forest. As soon as they entered, Gray spread out his spiritual sense. Sigh, I don't think it's here. But that thing is surprising. Hopefully, it's not what this guy's searching for, Gray thought while staring into the forest. Albeit not finding the pond within his sensory range, he could sense something else close by. He didn't know what it was exactly, but he could tell it wasn't simple. When he sensed it, he recalled Ellis telling him there was something here that he wanted. Do you know the location of what you're searching for? Gray turned to look at Ellis. Yes, Senior. Follow me. Ellis replied happily before taking the lead. Gray didn't speak any further and followed behind him. He kept his spiritual senses out, just in case he could find the pond. His senses couldn't cover the entire bamboo forest, so he didn't have any idea if it was here or not. As they walked further into the bamboo forest, Gray got a clearer grasp of what he previously sensed. It was radiating the aura of the water element. Even though what he was searching for was a pond, this wasn't it. This is likely what he's searching for. Sigh, why do I always have to get into so much trouble for others' sake? Gray thought when he also sensed the aura of people there as well. The people there had also sensed them, so they were probably expecting them. Hey, stay vigilant, he warned Ellis. There's a chance that those people would attack as soon as they got there, so he felt it was better to warn Ellis beforehand. I know, Senior. I can sense them as well. Ellis nodded. Gray didn't speak any further and continued walking behind him nonchalantly. He would occasionally run his hands across the bamboo leaves. After walking for almost 3 minutes, they got to where the treasure was located. Unfortunately, Gray didn't find anything related to the pond he was searching for. In front of them was a cave abode. Gray guessed it was man-made given how it looked. It even had what looked like a door in front of it. What you're searching for should be inside this place, Gray said. He had heard of how some experts would live in the magical beasts forest, and this is the first of such abodes he had seen. According to rumors, such abodes hide lots of treasures. The person who stayed here must have been a water elementalist. He looked around. He couldn't deny it. Staying in this bamboo forest would be very peaceful. Other than the occasional beasts which would intrude, it wasn't bad. As long as the expert sets up some arrays, they could stay here peacefully. After getting involved with arrays and forge mastering, Gray knew how important it was for one to stay in a peaceful environment. The better the environment, the clearer he could think. Rumble. The stone door in front of the cave abode rolled to the left side. As soon as it opened up, swoosh, boom, bang, multiple attacks flew out of the cave abode, heading straight for Gray and Ellis. Since the duo was already expecting this, they didn't have any problems with moving out of the way. Heh, if it isn't Miss Ellis. A mocking laughter rang out from the cave. What Gray found surprising was what they called Ellis. Although he thought he was a lady the first time he saw him, he didn't think of calling him Miss at any time. Looks like he is familiar with these people. Gray thought inside. Since they were people Ellis was acquainted with, then there's a chance that he might resolve this without having to fight. But from the way they addressed him, he didn't think the chances of that happening would be high. A middle-aged man was the first to walk out of the cave abode, followed by 4 other men and 2 women. All 7 of them were either in the 8th or 9th stage of the origin plane. I didn't think he would make it here, one of the women said, her voice slightly rueful. It was almost like they didn't wish to see him. It's you guys, Ellis exclaimed in surprise. Of course it's us. Now, tell us, how did you escape from the bear? The middle-aged man asked curiously. I was helped by this senior. Ellis pointed at Gray, not even offended by the way the group was addressing and speaking to him. Ah, wait, how did you people find out about the bear? He suddenly thought of something and asked. When he was first attacked by the bear, the group was nowhere to be found. They got separated when they just got to the bamboo forest. On his way to find them, he was unfortunate and attracted the bear. How can you be this dumb? Gray, who was by the side, couldn't help but ask. Even without interacting with these people, he could tell they didn't like Ellis. There's a chance that they were even the ones who caused his attack. Wait, how did he survive escaping from the bear for such a long distance? He thought, confused. Given the distance from here to where he helped Ellis, it was almost impossible for Ellis to stay alive under the pursuit of the bear, unless he had the lightning or wind element, which would have given him a boost in terms of speed. It was just like the time he was almost hit by the attack of the mole. Gray was certain that given Ellis's speed, there was no way he could escape it. But for some reason, he managed to escape it by a hair's breadth. What do you mean, senior? Ellis asked, his face showing pure innocence. He didn't understand why Gray asked him such a question. These people obviously set you up, yet here you are, smiling in their faces. Gray decided to point it out to him. No, senior. They would never do such a thing. If not for them, I'd have been dead. Ellis explained. Gray shook his head with a sigh. How in the world is Ellis still alive given his reasoning? To be honest, he had no idea. And who are you? The middle-aged man asked, turning his attention to Gray. A passerby. Gray shrugged and moved to the side. Since Ellis was being stupid, then there was no use helping him. Not just that, but he was suspicious of him. If this group were to kill him, it would be to his advantage, since he would get the chance to obtain whatever was here. Good, make sure to act like one HMPH. The middle-aged man snorted before walking in Ellis's direction. Since you're here, why don't you help us in collecting the item? He put his hand across Ellis's shoulder. What item? Ellis asked, confused. Don't worry, you'll find out when we get there. The middle-aged man snickered as he shoved Ellis in the direction of the cave. Okay. Looks like there's also something there you guys needed. Why didn't you say so earlier? Ellis asked as they headed into the cave. Gray was the only one left outside. Is he truly naive, or could this be an act? He looked at the cave suspiciously. Chapter 423. Gray stood outside the cave. After pondering for a while, he decided to walk inside as well. The cave was that big, but there was another passageway that led deeper into the cave. As soon as Gray walked in, he could sense a murderous aura, but it surprisingly wasn't from the group who came in with Ellis, rather, it's from the cave itself. An array, most likely a trap array, but if it is, how did they escape from it? He thought while looking at the group. He got his answer after staring around the cave. There were 2 dead bodies lying on the ground with blood all over them. It's clear to see that those 2 were sacrificed so that the group could escape. Now Gray understood why these guys were pushing Ellis forward, since he's always lucky, and is able to dodge all those deadly attacks by a hair's breadth. Then there's a chance that he might be able to do the same here. The traps in the array will only go off when one steps on it. Without a quick reaction, there's no way these people could dodge it. And since they don't know where to step on, they can't advance. This array wasn't like Gray initially thought it was. An array like this gives one the chance of retreating, but advancing is extremely difficult. Looks like whoever stayed here is a kind-hearted person. Whoever it is gives the people who would come in here a way out, making sure their cave is not a death ground for many. Only those who are greedy would want to advance no matter what, thought Gray. What are you doing here? The middle-aged man looked at Gray viciously. Do you own this place? Gray asked apathetically. Yes. The middle-aged man nodded since he knew what Gray wanted to do. Oh, is that so? Why don't you lead the way then? Gray asked with a smirk. Captain, should we deal with this guy before advancing? One of the men in the group asked the middle-aged man while staring at Gray with a vicious gaze. Let him be, the captain of the group said before turning around. None of the others knew why he didn't order them to attack, but since he had decided, they didn't question him. Gray scoffed with speaking any further, while Ellis wiped off his sweat. He thought the duo was about to start fighting. He had been traveling with Gray for a few hours, so he wasn't really too bothered about him. He was more concerned about the well-being of the group, since the chances of Gray killing them were quite high, according to his hypothesis. Move. The captain shoved Ellis in the back, making him move forward due to the momentum. The passageway was around 5 meters wide, and from what Gray could tell, there was at least a trap every 2 feet. This would make advancing extremely difficult. After being shoved forward, Ellis entered the passageway, and the ground he stepped on lit up. Crap. Gray cursed out cause he knew that Ellis just triggered the array. Boom. An explosion, followed by Ellis's scared scream, rang out almost simultaneously. Impossible. He shouldn't be able to dodge it. Gray looked at Ellis with doubt starting to grow in his mind. Given his speed, even he would have a difficult time dodging that. Yet, Ellis dodged it so effortlessly. Although he made it seem like he was only barely able to, Gray was no fool. He's definitely hiding something. This was the only conclusion Gray could come to, and what Ellis is hiding is most likely his true strength. Gray wasn't 100% sure, but he was at least 40% sure about it. If he were the one who was told to pass through this place, then he would have to rely on his knowledge of arrays to pass through it. Either that or he would use his space element to move past it entirely. Haha, I don't know how you managed to dodge it, but you'll be our guide forward. Keep moving, before the array restores its powers. The captain of the group laughed happily before ordering Ellis to continue moving. Gray studied the array, and it was just like the captain said, it was already slowly restoring its strength. If the group didn't move quickly, then they might be caught up by it. But what? You better start moving or those attacks would be the last of your worries. The captain cut Ellis off while giving him a threatening look. Ellis gulped in fear, before taking a step forward. On dropping his foot, he hastily retreated, but to his surprise, an attack didn't go off. Move. The captain took a step forward, making Ellis run into him when he retreated. Sir, this I'll die. Ellis tried explaining. No, you won't. I don't know how you keep doing it, but I'm at least more confident in you passing through this place compared to any of us here, the captain said. Now, move. He later added while tapping Ellis on the shoulder as if encouraging him. Ellis staggered forward. After clenching his fists with gritted teeth, he advanced forward. Whoosh. Boom. Bam. Bang. The array kept lighting up and sending out attacks, but just like the first time, Ellis managed to dodge them all by a tiny margin. Gray, who still hadn't taken a step forward, was staring at Ellis with sharp eyes. There's no denying it. He's definitely more powerful than what he shows, he thought inside. After thinking up to this point, he thought of retreating, since he didn't like being involved with people like this. Since Ellis was hiding his strength, then he naturally had an ulterior motive. Gray wasn't 100% sure about his conjectures, but he felt it was better safe than sorry. Since he had the space element, then escaping from here wouldn't be a problem. It's not worth it. His curiously urged him to follow them, but thinking about it properly, he felt taking such risks wasn't worth it. Chapter 424. It's shut. Gray stared at the door. After the array lit up the first time, the door closed shut. Gray didn't take note of it, since he was more focused on how Ellis was going to escape, and how the array worked. I guess I have no choice, he thought. With that thought, he sat down crossed-legged. For now, he didn't plan on following them. Once the group gets past the array, he might decide to go then. But for now, he didn't want to involve himself with them. While Gray was sitting down, the group continued advancing. Captain, look, he isn't coming along. One of the ladies in the group informed the captain of Gray's strange behavior. The captain looked at him, but quickly focused on the path ahead of them. Forget about it. We should focus on what's more important, he said. What if he's only waiting for us to bring the item out before he attacks us? One of the men asked. Then he will have to lose his life, the captain said with confidence. If you say so, Captain, another man said while licking his lips. Sir, can I rest? Ellis's weak voice came from ahead of them. Keep moving, the arrays are restoring, the captain said, not even bothering about how haggard Ellis currently looked from the multiple near-death encounters from the array's attacks. From Gray's estimate, they were currently almost halfway through the trap array. If not for his suspicion, he would be certain that Ellis would definitely die from the shock of all the residual attacks that were hitting him. But his suspicion is saying otherwise. If we continue at this rate, I'll die before we even get to the other side. Ellis begged with tears in his eyes. Don't worry, you won't die, you've been surviving till now, haven't you? The captain said before taking a step towards Ellis, his murderous gaze sweeping his entire body. Ellis felt chills from the gaze and took a step back. With no choice, he was forced to continue moving forward. Boom, bang, bam. The attacks kept ringing out, sometimes they would be followed by Ellis's pained cries. Gray, who was sitting by the side, opened his eyes to look at the pitiful-looking Ellis. Could it be that he only has a knack for escaping at the last moment? He asked himself when he saw blood on the body of Ellis. He watched them for a little further, contemplating if he should step in to help Ellis or not. From how Ellis looked, he didn't think he could endure any further. On the passageway, Sir, please, any more and I'll truly die. Ellis burst out crying while holding onto the leg of the captain. His eyes were already starting to close. There are signs of blood in them. He was bleeding from his nose, mouth, and ears. He could still hear the ringing sound of the attacks exploding from the ground. We're already close to the end of the passageway. 6 meters more. You wouldn't die now when your goal is right in front of you, would you? The captain asked. I don't want to die, but I can't go any further, or else I might die. Ellis continued begging. I really want you to rest. But you see, the array is already starting to recover. If you don't move in the next 2 minutes, then the person standing at the back would die from the attack. You don't want that, right? The captain asked with a smile. Damn it. Since you say so, then why don't we all die together? Ellis let go of his leg, a crazed look appearing on his face. Since the captain wanted to kill him, he wasn't going to take a step forward. He was certain that at least 5 or even 6 of the 8 people in the group would die if they want to pass through. Then there's still the return journey. The captain looked at the crazed Ellis, and he was sure he would not move anymore. Presently, he was caught between 2 minds. Either he sacrifices one of his members at the back, so they could wait for Ellis to recover, or he forced Ellis to move forward. Both choices come with a huge disadvantage, especially Ellis dying. If Ellis dies, then there's no hope for them to return. But if he sacrifices any of his members, then he would lose the trust of his comrades. He turned to look at his group. They all heard the conversation between Ellis and their captain, and the one who was more scared was the guy standing at the back of the group. Does any of you have any healing tonic? The captain asked. No, we used them when we first entered this place, and that time we helped this moron, one of the ladies said, pointing at Ellis at the end of her speech. Fine, I'll go to the back, you better recover quickly. The captain decided to be the one to stand at the back. He managed to get to the back without stepping outside the place they used in coming here. Since 2 people couldn't stand in the same position, he had to maneuver there at the risk of dying. His comrades all felt warm on seeing the gesture of their captain, especially the guy at the back. A minute later, tell the boy to move, the captain said. I still need to rest, Ellis said. He was not only hurt, but he was also exhausted. Moving any further is currently impossible for him. If he doesn't move, I'm not going to be the only one to die, but everyone else, the captain said. When the group heard this, they felt he was correct, since Ellis could decide not to move until all of them dies. Move. The man at the front shoved Ellis forward, not bothering about his condition. No, please, Ellis screamed, but he couldn't stop himself from moving forward after being pushed forward. Boom. The explosion was followed by Ellis's scream, but for some reason, the scream sounded longer than the group thought. When the explosion died down, a look of extreme shock appeared on their faces. People will be people. Chapter 425. You can stop screaming now, or I might just toss you back in there, Gray said emotionlessly. Ellis was stunned on hearing his voice. Looking around, he noticed he wasn't on the passageway anymore. Instead, he was on the safe side of it. Senior, you saved me again. Ellis fell on his knees, tears and snot all over his face, as he hugged Gray's leg. Don't make me regret it, Gray said as he dodged Ellis's attempted hug. Ellis fell on the ground, screaming from the pain that was racking his body. Here, Gray passed a bottle to him. Without even looking at the contents, Ellis gulped it down. Reckless. That was meant for forget it. It doesn't change anything. Gray looked at Ellis, hopelessly. How could he drink the contents of the bottle without even asking what it was or even inspecting it? Isn't he by any chance scared of being poisoned? The group, who was still in the passageway, looked at Gray and Ellis in shock. The only question running through their minds was, how did Gray get to the other side of the passageway so quickly? He not only got there quickly, but they didn't even realize when he left his spot. How did you get there? The captain of the group was the first to regain himself and ask. Simple, I walked, Gray replied before turning around, heading deeper into the cave. Gray's reply stunned the group. What do you mean you walked? There's no other way to get there other than this passageway, the captain asked, hoping that Gray might tell them the secret he used. Unfortunately, Gray didn't give them a glance, neither did he answer them. He headed into the cave and soon disappeared. Sir, I'll be going now. Ellis stood up, bowed to the group, and ran after Gray. Ellis, come back, you're fine now. Why don't you help us get through the rest part of the passageway? The captain tried to persuade Ellis with the gentlest voice he could muster. Ellis whistled loudly as he ran after Gray, and the group couldn't deny it. For someone who had a very feminine voice, his whistling was pretty loud. Damn it, Captain, what should we do? The man standing at the front of the group couldn't help but ask. What else can we do? We'll advance, of course, the captain said nonchalantly. Why did you think I willingly agreed to come back? I knew the kid was done. There's no way I'm going to take the risk of being the one who would attempt this piece of shit. I'm not even 20% confident in dodging it. He thought inside, but his face didn't betray his true feelings, so no one knew what was on his mind. The man standing at the front of the group shivered in fear. From what he could feel, he wasn't confident in being able to escape. Now, he regretted not being the one who went to the back of the line. The captain had already predicted this. No wonder he went back so freely. I've been wondering why such a selfish man would make such a selfless decision. It didn't take long for some of the group to know the captain's goal of going to the back of the group. But the few people at the back didn't care. Given the way things stand, only the first 4 people would die. The man standing at the front refused to take a step forward. He was shaking from the fear. Now he knew just what Ellis was going through when he was standing in front of them. Can we switch places? He turned to the man behind him and asked. I'm good. The man behind him shook his head. Move. We don't have all day, the captain ordered. After fidgeting for a few more seconds, the man prepared himself to dodge the attack. As soon as his foot touched the ground, it instantly lit up. Boom. Bang. The sound of a human body hitting the roof of the passageway rang out. The body crashed into the ground, landing in the spot where it stepped on, deep in the cave. Boom. Senior, looks like they've tried moving forward, Ellis said after hearing the explosion. No need to think of them. They're all going to die here anyway, Gray said nonchalantly. The duo continued heading forward before seeing what looked like an exit. Compared to the dark cave, there was light coming from the road ahead of them. Gray didn't think much about it, because he could sense what they were searching for emanating from this place. He was the first to take a step in. All of a sudden, he disappeared. Bang! An attack rang out from where he was previously standing. Ellis looked ahead of him in surprise before mumbling under his breath, impossible. Gray soon appeared behind Ellis. Looking at where he was previously standing, multiple ice shards could be seen on the ground. If he didn't escape in time, then he would have been pierced by the ice shards. This person really doesn't want anyone obtaining their treasure, Gray said before moving forward once again. Ellis didn't immediately move forward. Instead, he kept staring at Gray in surprise. Senior, how were you able to dodge that? He couldn't help but ask. A trick, Gray replied offhandedly. He soon disappeared into the light coming out of the other side of the cave. Ellis finally walked forward. When Gray entered the place, he couldn't help but reminisce about his teacher. This place was a valley, just like the one his teacher stayed in. The only difference was that this one was very small compared to his teacher's valley. In the center of the valley was a pond that was emanating a high concentration of water essence. How did you know this was here since you didn't come in? Gray asked curiously. I sensed it. I'm very sensitive towards any treasures that have to do with the water element. Ellis replied proudly. Chapter 426. Could it be that I was wrong about him? Gray thought while staring at Ellis. He had some suspicions about Ellis, especially after seeing how he kept dodging fatal strikes at the last minute. But when he was pushed into the array by the group, he watched him and knew he was too exhausted to move anymore. If he were truly hiding his strength, then he would have dodged it at the last moment. But he didn't. Luckily for Ellis, he had already prepared to teleport to the other side of the passageway. All he had to do was to come out of the space tunnel. When he got to where Ellis was and dragged him along, he decided maybe Ellis had a skill or a treasure that might be helping him with those last-minute escapes. But his suspicion didn't die though. He had always been a cautious person, so there was no way his suspicion would die just like that. I guess this is what brought you here. You can have it then, Gray said before walking in another direction. He wanted to explore the place. How these places were made has always intrigued him. Is there a way that they create these places, or are they natural? He thought while studying the small hill in the valley. Unlike his teacher's valley, there was no house here. Ellis watched Gray observing the place in shock. He couldn't believe Gray just let him take the treasure, without even taking as much as a glance at it. People like Senior are very rare, he muttered before walking towards the pond. On getting there, he dived inside, traveling over 30 meters in a second. It was almost like he was one with the water. If Gray were to see him, he would be stunned. Even though Ellis was a water elementalist, it would be impossible to move with such speed and ease unless he had gotten to the Overlord plane. After almost 20 seconds, Ellis got to his destination. He was currently standing upright, looking at the glowing blue orb at the bottom of the pond. He stretched his left hand out, grabbing onto the orb. Ellis looked around the pond as if searching for something. After seeing nothing, he sat down crossed-legged while still at the bottom of the pond. Gray, who was in the valley, was still studying the valley, hoping to find something that would at least give him a clue about these places. He looked around for about 5 minutes, but didn't find anything. How come he's not out yet? He suddenly recalled Ellis had gone into the pond for a while now. He remembered seeing him jumping into the pond, but he hadn't felt any disturbance from the pond yet, which made the situation strange. Is there a chance that there might be a beast in the pond? After the thought flashed through his head, he quickly disapproved of it, since he would have sensed it if a beast were to attack. Besides, he could clearly sense that Ellis was still in the pond. His aura is very close to whatever was emanating the water essence aura. He walked towards the pond, but stopped around 5 meters from it. The reason for this was that he could sense some people coming towards the valley, radiating intense killing intent. Oh, 4 of them survived, how unexpected. He turned around, looking at the entrance of the valley. He thought at most only 2 of them would survive, but for 4 of them to survive meant that they were strong. Where's that little brat? I'll kill him. The captain's enraged voice could be heard from outside the valley. Gray prepared an attack while waiting for them. Since they were going to fight anyway, why not take one of them out as soon as they stepped into the valley? The array that attacked him when he stepped into the valley hadn't recovered yet, so he had no choice but to do its work. Captain, don't worry, none of the boom, bang. Gray exploded out with a terrifying attack as soon as the person at the front of the group took a step inside the valley. The figure was sent flying, but Gray frowned when he saw what happened. His attack was blocked. Such a shameless act. I thought you were bigger than this. The captain's voice, which was filled with mockery, rang out. The group of 4 walked into the valley with confident strides. All 4 of them were the strongest amongst the group of 7. They survivors of the group were 2 men and 2 ladies. All 4 of them were in the 9th stage of the origin plane. And given how the person at the front managed to block Gray's attack, it showed there were no pushovers. I was only doing this place a favor. I was also attacked when I walked in here. Since I'm an upright person, I feel we should all be treated equally. Gray replied with a sneer. That's such a great explanation. I like you. Why don't you join us? The captain laughed before suddenly proposing. Captain. The 3 survivors of the group looked at the captain simultaneously. What do you say? With your strength and whatever trick you used in passing the passageway, you would be very useful to us. I don't even mind making you the vice captain of the group. The captain continued. It was like he didn't hear what the others in his group said. I'll have to pass. I'm not interested in traveling with others. Gray replied nonchalantly. A shame. I truly don't want somebody like you to die such a worthless death. I know you're only recently acquainted with that moron, but fighting for him is a bit too much, don't you think so? Why don't you give my offer a second thought? The captain asked. Like I said the first time, I don't like traveling with people, Gray said with both hands behind him. Sire, a shame, truly a shame. I guess you'll have to die then. The captain shook his head with a rueful expression on his face. Chapter 427. Kill him, the captain said to the group before walking towards the pond. He could sense the treasure was inside the pond, and close to the pond was Ellis's aura. That brat, he's trying to get his hands on something I've set my sights on. Gem PH. If not for the fact that we need him to get out of here, I'd have killed him immediately, he snorted coldly. Boom. He suddenly retreated 2 steps back, an attack landing on where he was previously standing. Are you that tired of living? He glared at Gray with an angry face. Do you think the likes of you can kill me? Gray smirked. You shouldn't be so full of yourself. I don't know who you are, but whoever gets in our way dies. The captain turned around, no longer interested in going into the pond. He wanted to join hands with the others and kill Gray quickly. Heh, I can say the same for you 4. Gray chuckled. Make sure he suffers before he dies. The captain changed his order. Previously, he just wanted Gray to die. Now, he wanted him to die in the slowest possible way. The 2 ladies were the first to attack. One of them was a fire elementalist, while the other was a wind elementalist. With the first attack, Gray knew the battle wouldn't be easy. The coordination between the ladies was insane. What was more terrifying was their ability to amplify each other's attacks. The wind element increases the intensity of the fire element attacks, making it far superior when compared to a normal fire elementalist's attack in the same stage. Even Gray's blue fire paled in comparison. Boom, bam, bang. Gray managed to block the attack, but the force of the attack pushed him almost 10 meters backward. Gray squinted his eyes, and for the first time in a while, he reevaluated his opponents. He took a step forward and exploded out with blue flames. His attacks shot towards the 2 ladies, but before they got there, an ice wall formed in front of them, blocking the attacks. Just as his attack was blocked by the ice wall, multiple lightning spears shot in his direction. Boom, bam. He dodged the attacks, but for some reason, the attacks didn't die down. Instead, they kept getting fiercer. Splash. Huh. When did water get here? Gray, who was focused on dodging the lightning spears, didn't know when the ground he was standing on got covered with water. His pupils dilated when he suddenly recalled something. Oh, crap. Buzz. The lightning current was transferred by the water, and for the first time, he was electrocuted by lightning. The blue vest he was wearing managed to block most of the lightning attacks, but he still felt the last part of the attacks. Immediately after he was electrocuted, he was picked into the air uncontrollably by a rising tornado. The tornado was then fueled by the fire and lightning element, giving off a beautiful red tornado, with silvery lines flashing across it. Ice shards appeared mid-air, shooting into the tornado repeatedly. Goosh. Bang. A large blue ball of fire exploded out from the middle of the tornado, forcefully blowing the tornado apart. Bam. Boom. The fireball spread out further in all directions, but the group easily dealt with the ones coming in his direction. Gray soon appeared in front of the group. His hair was a mess, and his clothes had some burn marks, which indicated that he sustained some damages from the fiery tornado. You look all right. Let's see how many more you can take, the captain of the group said with a snicker. Although he was impressed by how Gray was able to forcefully break their attacks, he knew that attack wouldn't be able to deal with him, since he was able to cross the passageway, and even save someone in the process. I was just getting warmed up, Gray replied while looking at his tattered clothes. Luckily, I always bring multiple sets of clothes, else I might have started robbing pants again. He shook his head when he recalled his experience in the trial land. With the storage ring, he has space for keeping multiple sets of clothes. Presently, he usually keeps most of his clothes in his storage ring. Oh, we haven't even started to warm up, the captain said, before turning to the others. Let's show this fool how we take care of passers-by who poke their noses in other people's business. Gladly, Captain, the trio said simultaneously. They moved to 4 different positions, putting Gray in the middle of the formation they made. With opponents in 4 different locations, Gray didn't panic. When he sensed the group coming, He made 2 inscriptions since he knew he would be fighting against a group of 4. Swoosh. Boom. He was the first to attack, targeting the wind elementalist amongst the group. The lady was able to dodge his attack before sending out an attack. The others followed suit, attacking Gray from behind, forcing him to block their attacks. Bam, bang. They kept exchanging moves, but Gray was at a disadvantage from the get-go. Although this wasn't the first time he was fighting against a group, this was the first time he was fighting against one this well organized and strong. He suddenly thought of what would have happened if the others were still alive. He would have most likely escaped, or even started using his space element from the start. Bang! Gray was forced back by a lightning attack, and the direction he retreated was where the fire elementalist was standing. With Gray's back turned to the lady, and given that he lost his bearing from the lightning attack, she didn't hold back when she unleashed a terrifying fire snake towards him. Boom! The fire snake was stopped halfway by a lightning attack. Huh! Who did that? The fire elementalist looked at the lightning elementalist suspiciously, but she knew he wouldn't block her attack. There's no need to think too much about it. Look up, the captain of the group said while looking up. The others did the same, and they saw the lightning inscription hanging in the air. An inscriber. This will be fun, the captain said. Chapter 428. Boom. All 5 of them attacked at the same time, Gray using 2 inscriptions to attack as well. He deflected the attacks of the fire, lightning, and wind elementalist, while using his superior speed to dodge the attack of the water elementalist. Bang, bam. Although Gray was fighting against 4 people, he was still able to fight them to a stalemate. There are times where he was affected by their attacks, but he had been able to keep himself fairly safe. Seeing how Gray is able to keep up with them, the group couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Other than the first time they were able to get a good strike at him, they haven't been able to replicate it. Captain, one of the ladies looked at the water elementalist a little worriedly. Don't worry, just stay calm. We'll break through his defense eventually. The captain reassured the others. He found Gray's performance impressive, nothing more. If he were to focus on only defending, then he wouldn't have a problem with holding out against a group of 4. What really matters is how long he can hold on for, he thought to himself. After getting reassured by the captain, the group calmed down and continued their routine attacks, making sure to always attack with precision. Gray focused fully on defending. With the help of the 2 inscriptions he made as well as his insane speed, he was dodging and blocking most of their attacks with his up. The wind elementalist yelled while raising both hands. A strong wind current suddenly sprang up from the ground where Gray was standing. Having experienced this thing before, Gray used the earth element to merge his feet with the ground, making it impossible for the rising tornado to pick him off the ground. A multi-elementalist, the captain exclaimed when he saw this, surprise evident in his voice. The others also noticed at the same time the captain noticed it, and shock was written all over their faces. This was the first time any of them was seeing a multi-elementalist, so their reaction was expected. But like the seasoned veterans they were, they quickly resumed their offense, this time with more ferocity. Boom, bang, bam. The battle started intensifying. The pressure Gray was facing naturally increased with the intensity of the battle. Although he had multiple elements, he couldn't attack with all of them at most 4 elements. He would train on it on some occasions. This was why he had been able to increase the number of elements to 4. While defending, he focused on the captain and turned the ground where he was standing into mud. Being taken unaware, the captain lost his balance, almost falling face first forward. Gray followed up with another attack, but the trio attacked him simultaneously. Not just them, even the captain who was falling attacked, since he knew Gray would attack him when he lost his balance. His attack was off though, since he didn't know the exact location Gray was standing, since his eyes were currently facing the ground. On seeing all 3 attacks, Gray was stuck between forcibly taking an attack, then using the opportunity to kill the captain. It didn't take him up to a second before he came up with a decision. He suddenly blinked twice, before disappearing to the shock of the trio who attacked him. Boom. An explosion rang out the moment he disappeared. When the trio turned to look, they saw a big dust cloud rising in the position where the captain was previously located. What? Gray's surprised voice could be heard from the dust. Swoosh. Bang. Gray flew out of the dust cloud, crashing into the ground. Everyone, spread out your spiritual senses. There's a technique he uses that gives him unparalleled speed. The captain's voice came out from the dust as it was starting to settle down. When the group looked, they saw the captain covered in ice armor that had cracks all over, and blood could be seen coming out from the side of his mouth. They heaved a sigh of relief when they saw that he was fine, although slightly injured. Gray stood up from the rubble he was in, after dusting his body. He looked straight at the captain of the group. He couldn't believe his space element was detected. He didn't detect it, he only sensed the ripples in space when I was coming out from the tunnel. I'm still not as good with the space element as I thought, he thought while staring in the direction of the captain. From what the captain said, he was able to ascertain that he didn't know of the space element. Gray could only attribute the captain sensing it to luck. How unfortunate, but I have to ask, how did you sense me? Gray asked before walking forward. His robe has long since exposed his face after this attack. Even when he was lifted into the air by the tornado previously, and some parts of his clothes burning, the part covering his face was okay. Easy. I kept my spiritual senses out while we were fighting. I've been wondering how you managed to get past the passageway without touching the array. You not only passed through it, but you also managed to save someone while you were at it, the captain said with a smile, before adding, I sensed something when the kid disappeared, so I wanted to confirm my suspicion. Gray looked at the captain, who had a proud expression on his face. He couldn't deny it. He was surprised that this man was able to sense the space ripples. Looks like some people are generally more sensitive to the space element. He was a little surprised by this discovery. I never thought you'd be so young, the captain said. Gray shrugged, not replying. After walking a little closer to the group, he smiled before spreading out his hand. Shall we? The captain nodded to his group, and they spread out once again, attacking as soon as they spread out. Boom, bam, bang. After all four of them attacked, they were surprised to see Gray's inscriptions attacking him as well. What happened next stunned the group. Chapter 429. Gray vanished from where the attacks were about to land. In his place was the unprepared lightning elementalist. Boom. Ah! An explosion rang out, followed by a scream which didn't last up to 2 seconds before dying down. Ronald, the wind elementalist amongst the two ladies, screamed in horror. The captain of the group and the fire elementalist had their mouths and eyes wide open after witnessing what just happened. He could at least come up with an explanation when Gray attacked him, but in this scenario, he didn't know what to think. He turned around, and Gray was leisurely standing in the position the lightning elementalist was standing, with a smug smile on his face. How is that possible? How can you switch places with a person without the person actually moving on his own free will? The captain asked Gray. Now, he was scared of even trying to attack Gray. After what Gray just displayed, anyone in their right minds would think twice before daring to attack him. Just a simple trick. Don't tell me you're scared of fighting now. I was just getting started, Gray said while playing with a small fireball he summoned in his palm. The captain looked at Gray's smiling face and couldn't help but unconsciously take a step back. People always tend to be afraid of the unknown, and this is exactly what is happening to the captain right now. With this trick of Gray, they can't attack him as a group anymore, since if he were to switch places with any of them, it would be an utter nightmare, just like what happened with the lightning elementalist. The explosion soon died down, and the lifeless body of the lightning elementalist was laid bare for all to see. What was worth mentioning was how the body was stuck on an earth spike that sprang out from the group, holding the body mid-air. The two ladies looked at the body in horror, before turning to look at Gray. Now, they all regretted the decision of coming in here. Had they known, they would have left after 2 from their group died when they first entered this place. Provoking someone like Gray made their decision even worse. Swoosh. Boom. The fire and wind elementalist attacked simultaneously, but Gray dodged the attack easily with the space element. Since he had already started using it, why go through the stress of blocking attacks anymore? Although using the space element was a bit stressful, he wouldn't have a problem with dealing with these guys until he runs out of the space element essence in his reserve. Don't attack him carelessly, the captain said to the duo. Since it has already gotten to this stage, he knew Gray wouldn't let them go, so he had to think of a way that they would be able to defeat him. The problem was, with Gray's supposedly insane speed that makes him literally disappear, how will they be able to attack him? Then, there's also the problem with that switching thing he did not too long ago. Multiple thoughts were flying through the captain's head as he watched Gray preparing to attack them. Just as Gray sent out his attack, the attack disappeared, then suddenly appearing within 1 meter of the wind elementalist. Boom! She managed to set up a windscreen, just as the attack was about to get to her, but the impact of the blast still sent her flying. The fire elementalist looked at the captain in terror. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. When Gray sent out the attack previously, he was standing in their front, but after the attack disappeared, it suddenly appeared on the left side of the wind elementalist. If not for her years of battle awareness, then she would have died from that single attack. Even though she managed to block it, it was evident that she wasn't unscathed from that attack. Group up. The captain charged in the direction the wind elementalist was going to land, using his water element to cushion her crashing. The fire elementalist ran after him. On getting there, she saw the wind elementalist was bleeding from the mouth, and given how she was clutching her stomach, there might be a chance that she had some broken ribs. What she found appalling was that Gray's attack didn't even hit her, she was only affected by the impact. What would have been the outcome if his attack had hit her? She asked, dumbstruck. Can you still fight? The captain asked while supporting the wind elementalist. The wind elementalist nodded, albeit with some difficulty. Good, backs against each other, the captain said to the ladies. This was the only thing he could think of doing for now. If they were to spread out, then Gray would be able to kill them all one by one, but putting their backs together would give them a better chance at defending those strange attacks of his. When thinking up Gray's strange attacks, his pupils suddenly dilated when he recalled something. Move, the captain said, but before he finished his statement, he realized his view had changed. Instead of seeing only Gray, he was seeing him standing alongside the two ladies. His heart fell when he saw this scene. Boom! Gray exploded out with his blue fire against the unsuspecting ladies, sending both of them flying with severe injuries. The duo could be said to be lucky since they didn't die on the spot, but the wind elementalist shouldn't be too far from death, given her previous injury. How can this be countered? The captain asked in dismay. Time to quit playing, Gray said while moving towards the ladies who were already unable to move after they crashed to the ground. The captain couldn't do anything other than to watch as Gray snuffed the life out of his companions. A few minutes later, Gray was the only one left standing in the valley. Space elementalists have always been a thorn to deal with. I never expected to see one as well versed in the space element as you are in such a place, a voice said, drawing the attention of Gray, who was still standing in front of the corpse of the captain. Chapter 430. Gray looked around, but couldn't find the source of the voice. Raising his head, he saw a familiar figure floating mid-air. Yes, my suspicion was right, he said while looking at Ellis, who was mid-air. There was no sign of surprise on his face. It's generally known that only Overlord plane elementalists and above could fly or float mid-air, so when he felt Ellis was hiding his power previously, he was accurate. The only thing that he found strange was the fact that Ellis was aware of the space element, and given how he spoke about it, he must have seen others. So, there are others, Gray thought to himself. He had always thought there were other space elementalists, but not hearing or seeing any other one, he felt a little skeptical about it. You're very sharp. Had I not stayed in that array a little longer, then you would have already found out by now, Ellis said casually while slowly coming down. What was the use of hiding your strength? Gray asked, not understanding why someone would go through all this stress. Fun, it was just for fun. Ellis shrugged after landing opposite Gray. Gray looked at him for a while, but refrained from speaking, since he knew someone who wouldn't have any qualms about doing something like this for fun. Not just one, but two. So, what now? He asked. Nothing. I've taken what I wanted, thanks to you, Ellis replied with a smile. You could have easily taken it by yourself, so no need to give me any credit, said Gray. You're right. But let's just take it as it is, all right. Ellis walked closer to Gray, stretching out his right hand. Sure, Gray replied, not wanting to continue the conversation. I never thought you were this young though. Ellis took his hand after seeing Gray not reciprocating his attempted shake. I did tell you I wasn't a senior, Gray said while walking out of the valley. All he wanted to do now was to exit this place, if not for the fact that he wasn't sensing any malice from Ellis. he would have escaped already. But he still didn't feel safe around him, since he couldn't sense his accurate strength. This meant that even if he were to use his fusion state, he probably won't be a match for Ellis. Yeah, but in this place people who are as strong as you tend to be old. And you had that robe that was covering your face. You can't blame me for misjudging you, Ellis explained. After walking for a while, Gray paused at the front of the passageway, where the array had already completely been restored. Who are you? He turned to look at Ellis. I'm Ellis, Ellis replied. I've not heard of anyone being an Overlord Plane Elementalist while still being this young, Gray said. He wasn't too sure if Ellis was young or an old man who refused to grow old, but he felt given how he was acting, he might be young. Given how little the essence is here, it's not surprising that there's no one my age in the Overlord Plane, Ellis replied. But you shouldn't be far from it, right? He asked. Gray shrugged, blinked twice before disappearing. Ellis chuckled before taking a step into the passageway. But unlike the first time, the arrays didn't light up. He casually walked to the other side of the passageway within 2 seconds. Gray, who watched how he walked past the passageway from the other side, was stunned by how he nonchalantly did it. He could swear he saw Ellis taking only 3 steps, yet he appeared on the other side of the passageway. Where are you from? He asked curiously. From the little conversation he just had with Ellis, it was safe to say that he's probably not from the Killen Empire. Far away, Ellis replied. The Trial Land? Gray asked curiously. That was the only place he knew that had more essence compared to the Killen Empire. Trial Land. What's that? Asked a confused Ellis. It's a strange place. If you're not from there, then where? Gray asked. I'm from the how am I going to put it? Let's just say the main continent. You wouldn't know about it since you people are stuck in this small place, Ellis replied. Small place? Main continent? Gray asked. His expression is clearly one filled with confusion. Yeah, something like that. I was accidentally transported here during an exploration 2 years back. Finding such a place where the main powerhouses were in the Overlord Plane surprised me. To be honest, the only thing of interest in this place is this magical beasts forest, Ellis explained. Just to be clear, don't try to go deep into this place. There's a terrifying presence in here that gives me the chills. I feel it can easily wipe out this continent of yours with as little as a sneeze, Ellis added, his voice shaking slightly when speaking about what he sensed in the magical beasts forest. Wait, what? Gray, who was still having a hard time processing what Ellis was saying, couldn't believe what he said about there being a terrifying presence that could wipe out the Azure continent with a sneeze. How strong would the creature or person be to wipe out the entire Azure continent with a sneeze? This place holds a lot of secrets. I don't think most of the people in my continent know about it, else it would have already been investigated by those supreme powerhouses, Ellis said. Gray paused for a few minutes trying to digest the information he just received. He had never read about there being another continent other than the Azure continent. He knew nothing about there being a main continent. What was more shocking was how weak Ellis actually thought they were. He didn't even seem to be putting those experts in the Overlord Plane in his eyes. Then, there's the issue of the inferior elemental essence in their continent. Gray had thought of the possibility of there being another place after visiting the Trial Land, but after not really finding out about anything, he threw the thought to the back of his head. Wow, this was the only word that came out of Gray's mouth after a few minutes of contemplating. Chapter 431. Gray and Ellis stared at each other for a while, each curious about the other. Well, Gray was more curious, given he likes to learn new things. And the prospect of finding out about another place that is far better than this place was thrilling. How did you get to become so good with the space element? Ellis was the first to break the silence. Luck, I guess. I found a strange, troublesome, cute teacher, Gray replied, thinking about Void when he spoke of this. Oh, there's another space elementalist here, Ellis asked, surprised. Yeah, he's far better at it than I am, Gray nodded. That's surprising, Ellis exclaimed. He was the one who introduced me to the space element, Gray said while rubbing his spatial ring. Ellis noticed the sadness in his eyes and voice, as well as when he was rubbing the spatial ring. Wait, is that a spatial ring? He asked, hopefully trying to get Gray's mind away from whatever sad thoughts he was having. Yeah, I got one by luck again, Gray replied with a soft smile. If not for Void, There was no way he would have thought that seemingly useless ring would actually turn out to be a spatial ring. You sure are lucky. Although where I'm from is far bigger than this place, and has a lot of space elementalists, obtaining one of these is quite hard. You're either from a good family or very strong, and to get a good one costs a fortune, Ellis said before pointing to the one on his finger. How come I didn't sense any space undulations from it? Gray asked. Well, he saw the ring on Ellis's finger during their journey, but he didn't sense anything strange from it. There's an array placed on it to make it look ordinary, Ellis replied. Such a sophisticated array. Can I take a look? Gray asked, a little excited. One of the things he enjoyed learning about was arrays. Whenever he sees something new, he would study it properly, integrating it with his previous knowledge. The reason he still hasn't left the cave was that he wanted to study how this trap array worked. Ellis didn't think too much and removed the ring from his finger before tossing it towards him. Gray caught it gently before studying it, his facial expressions changing multiple times. This is really good. If I can learn how it works, then it would be an amazing breakthrough, he mumbled while fumbling the ring in his hand. On seeing Gray's expression while he was studying the ring, Ellis knew he must be someone who had a high interest in arrays. After looking at it for a while, Gray reluctantly gave it back to Ellis. Ellis took the ring before placing it back on his finger. There are a lot of things Gray wanted to ask Ellis, but he didn't feel it was appropriate. Come with me, I'll be returning in 2 days' time, Ellis suddenly said. Huh? Gray looked at Ellis, confused. I've been searching for a way to leave this place, and I found an array formation that seems to be able to transport me back there. I don't know which people made it, but if my guess is correct, then they must be from where I'm from, Ellis explained. As much as I would like to go, I have a lot of things to take care of here. Gray shook his head sadly. Even though Ellis hadn't told him much about this place he was from, he could tell it would help him grow faster, compared to staying in the Azure continent. What might that be? I could help, Ellis asked. He liked Gray, and making friends with such a genius would be a great thing for him. For Gray to grow this powerful while in a place like this, it was unimaginable what he would achieve if he were to accompany him back to his continent, which had superior resources. I'm searching for a place. It's a bamboo forest like this one. This was why I spoke with you when I heard you say a bamboo forest, Gray said. Since Ellis was powerful and wanted to help him, then why not? He has never been stupid, so when a good opportunity arises, of course, he was going to take it. A bamboo forest. What are you looking for? Ellis asked. Gray went on to explain what he was searching for in the bamboo forest. After listening to him, Ellis fell deep in thoughts. A shame, I've used up the one that was with me. I don't know where this bamboo forest is, but for the next 2 days, I'll help you search for it. Hopefully, we can find it before then, Ellis added. Gray nodded, before thanking him for his help. Although he couldn't say he trusted Ellis, he could tell that he wasn't a bad person, at least to him. Could it be that they are not from this continent? Gray suddenly thought of his parents. According to Old Man Gerald, there is no information about his parents in the Azure continent. He said they appeared all of a sudden and disappeared in the same manner. No one has been able to tell him where they were from. The more he thought about it, the more he felt like this was the most probable explanation. If they didn't come from the Azure continent, then it made sense how they suddenly disappeared without a trace. After calming his raging thoughts, he started studying the array in the passageway. There was no way he was going to pass up this chance to learn this array formation. Ellis, who was waiting for him, was surprised when he saw him sitting on the ground close to the passageway. What is he doing? He thought. He soon got his answer when he saw a familiar gleam in Gray's eyes. It was exactly the same as the one he saw when Gray was studying his ring. Chapter 432. Time flew by, and before long, the day turned to night. Ellis was first stunned, then frustrated, and later on impressed at Gray's obsession with trying to figure out how the array in the passageway worked. He had seen people who wanted to learn, but few were at Gray's level of diligence. He had been studying Gray's expression over the past 5 hours, and he could tell that he made some improvements. Well, it's not from his expression, but from the fact that he walked into the first part of the array, and it didn't light up. It was only after almost a minute did it light up. Presently, Gray was already midway through the entire passageway, and it hasn't lit up. When he passed it previously, he used his strength to forcibly suppress it, hence the reason he was able to casually walk through it. But Gray was carefully studying and finding the weak links in the array. This is why it wasn't lighting up even after so long. He must be a genius in array formations, Ellis exclaimed inside. Wait, if I recall correctly, he mainly used 3 different elements when he was fighting against those guys, adding the space element to it. That makes it 4. Wow, what sort of a monster is he? People with 3 elements aren't rare back at home, although there are some with 4. For one to appear in such a place is truly remarkable. He looked at Gray with eyes wide open. If he were to find out that the 4 he knew of were just half of Gray's elements, it's unknown how he would react. 10 more minutes passed and Gray walked out from the array. I'm done, we should head out, he said to the baffled-looking Ellis. Oh, okay. Ellis came back to his senses before looking at the array once again, waiting to see if it would light up. No need to check, it won't light up. Although, if you were to step on it, the outcome would be different, Gray said with a small smile. Ellis looked at Gray before deciding to test out what he said. With a few steps, he appeared before the array. He placed his left leg on it, and even before his leg touched the array, it lit up, sending out an explosion that was far stronger than what it used to. I might have forgotten to add that I modified it while I was studying it, Gray said while scratching the back of his head. Ellis, who was still in the explosion, came out coughing from the smoke. He was fine, except for his clothes which suffered from some burns. He looked at Gray, and the more he thought about it, the more he felt like Gray was someone who could easily topple the genius in his continent. Well, not with his current strength though, but he believed it would be possible in a few years' time. Wouldn't this kill everyone who is coming in here? Ellis asked. No. Gray shook his head before continuing. Remember when I said I modified it? Ellis nodded to his question. Well, you see, it needed to let out a powerful explosion. That way, it would stop functioning. It can easily be reactivated, but I set up a trap array to ensure no one activates it, Gray explained. As if to test what Gray said, Ellis stepped on the passageway again, but this time he set up a powerful defensive armor around his body. Even though he wasn't hurt by the previous explosion, it still rocked him. Fortunately for him, the array didn't light up, nor did it explode. Oh, it's just like you said. He lowered his guard before turning around. Boom. An explosion rang out from the other side of the passageway, scaring the shit out of Ellis. Now, the array has been completely nullified. Gray nodded confidently before stepping out of the cave. You didn't kill that guy from before? Ellis asked, shocked. He knew he didn't sense any sign of life in the captain's body after Gray killed him. Well, I wanted to, but then I figured what was better, killing him or keeping him trapped here. I decided to go with the latter, since it might give him an opportunity to survive. He was unfortunate and woke up sooner than expected. Since he was already up, I just thought it wasn't worth it letting someone like him live. Gray shrugged. What do you mean woke up sooner than expected? You literally stayed in here for over 5 hours. Ellis looked at Gray stunned. This guy's ruthless. If he were to come with me, the piece of the continent would be turned upside down, he thought happily. 5 hours? I thought we were only there for a few minutes, Gray asked surprised. On looking up, he realized it was already dark. Crap. You're right. Of course I am. Now, where do we begin our search? Ellis asked while looking around. I have no idea. I forgot to ask the person where the bamboo forest was located. So, Gray spread out his hands. Take this, I'll go out to search for it myself. Ellis threw a crystal orb towards Gray. Gray caught it and looked at it with interest. What does this do? The orb wasn't big, just slightly larger than Gray's palm. It's for communication. See, I have one with me. Ellis brought out another crystal orb, showing it to Gray. Gray looked into the orb on his hand, and to his surprise, it showed the image of Ellis, who was a few meters away from him. Wow, I've been hoping to make something like this, to think it has already been created, he exclaimed. Wait, what? Ellis asked, surprised. I wanted to make something like this, but I haven't been able to figure out how the arrays would work. Gray replied sincerely. Are you sure you grew up here? Ellis almost wanted to ask, but refrained from doing so. From the small time he has chatted with Gray, he could tell he didn't think like most of the people here, although there were always weird people everywhere. Chapter 433. Gray looked in the sky as Ellis flew off in search of the bamboo forest he wanted. Before Ellis left, he gave him an extra wooden plaque he made. This one was for tracking his movements. That way, he could head out to meet him if he finds the pond. Wow, my first day here has been full of surprises, he thought while bringing out the communication device he made for himself and his friends. After hanging out with Ellis for a bit, he started missing his friends, Klaus and Reynolds, especially since Ellis had their somewhat playful personality. The difference was that, compared to the duo, Ellis still hadn't gotten to their level yet. What would happen if they were to hang out together? Well, I believe Klaus and Ray would forever use his voice to mock him, while Alice would just be excited she has a strong training partner. Not to mention Void, he would want him to follow him on a journey, so he could steal all the shiny things. In all, it would be a disaster for others, he thought while smiling. On checking the communication device, he almost threw it away from Klaus's yelling voice. Despite the fact that he was only hearing the voice in his head, he was still stunned by it. What was more annoying was that Klaus wasn't saying anything. All he did was scream his name all through. What? He asked, exasperated. Oh, you're finally here. What's up? Klaus's excited voice soon came back. Nothing, I've been studying something for the past few hours. Have you done anything that made people want to kill you lately? I feel like you have given how excited you are, Gray replied. Of course not. I was only chased by an entire town while my dad was supporting them. He even tripped me twice, so that I could be beaten by those people. Can you believe him? Klaus said. What did you do? Gray asked, almost facepalming. He had always known that Klaus was a troublemaker, but he just keeps raising the bar each time they meet or talk after a long time. You see, there was this girl in the town. Just to be clear, she was the one who approached me. I didn't make any advances towards her. Who would have known that she was betrothed to one guy from a city not too far from there? The town was under the protection. Klaus went on to tell him about his recent tale. After meeting the girl, Klaus became friends with her, and her future husband saw them together. He rushed towards him, and Klaus beat the hell out of him. It caused a huge ruckus, and the guy went back to call his family members. On seeing them, Klaus swept the ground with them, since even the elders who were called over were still in the early stages of the origin plane. On seeing that they couldn't beat him, they decided to take it out on the town. Klaus, being respectful towards the elderly in the town, couldn't fight against them, so he did what he felt was best. He sealed them up in the town ? And ran away. He never expected his father to not only destroy the ice seal, he even found a way to get them to move faster, while telling Blake to distract him. In the end, he was beaten up by a group of old men and women, before being forced to apologize to the young man who wanted to get married to the young lady. The truth was, he didn't really have any feelings for the young lady. He just found her company to be entertaining. From the start, it was all a misunderstanding. He thought the young man wanted to force himself on the young lady, hence he beat him up. After finding out the truth, it was already too late. He had already beaten up the elders of the young man's family. I still find it surprising that all the people you've offended haven't tried to come together to fight you yet. I think you might be able to unite the entire continent, just so that they could beat you up. Gray shook his head. Klaus will always be Klaus. So, have you gone into the magical beasts forest? Klaus asked. Yeah, I'm currently there, Gray replied. Before telling him of his experience here, he didn't forget to talk about his new acquaintance. He still hadn't started considering Ellis as a friend yet. He didn't know him, nor did he trust him. He didn't tell Klaus about the new continent he heard of. Even though he was intrigued by this new continent, he wouldn't go with Ellis. Instead, he planned to ask him where the array was located, and then go on his own. After he has confirmed that his parents aren't here, he would go first before bringing his friends along. Since he knew nothing of this place, he would get Ellis to tell him all he knew before he left. Wait, you said he has a lady's voice? Klaus asked. Of everything he heard from Gray, Ellis having a lady's voice was the only thing he found interesting. Yeah, he was saved multiple times by people whenever he was in distress, because they thought he was a damsel in distress, Gray said. Ha ha ha. If I were in their position, I'd beat the crap out of him after saving him. Klaus laughed out loudly. Gray continued speaking with him until Reynolds joined in on the conversation. Gray was not surprised when he found out that he already knew of Klaus's incident. Alice later joined in the conversation, and before the group knew it, they spoke for over 3 hours, with Gray laughing almost all through because of Klaus and Reynolds. Before they stopped speaking, they all asked about Gray's well-being, and also if he had found what took him there. Not yet, but hopefully, soon, he replied. Okay, don't forget to take care of yourself. If you die, I'll come and kill you again, Klaus said. Is that even possible? Reynolds asked. Shut up, I'm threatening him, Klaus scolded from the other side. Gray chuckled before keeping the device. He knew Klaus and Reynolds would continue this for a while before they stop, so he decided to let them be. Chapter 434. The next day, Ellis was still out searching for the bamboo forest which had the liquid that Gray wanted. Unfortunately, even after searching the entire night, he still hasn't been able to locate it. He had seen 2 bamboo forests during this time, but none of them had what Gray wanted. Gray, on the other hand, decided it was best for him to continue exploring the magical beasts forest on his own. He specifically chose the direction Ellis was heading. That way, if Ellis were to find the place, he wouldn't have any problems with quickly getting to him. I think it'll be best if I were to break through to the 9th stage while I'm here. The essence here is slowly increasing the further I head in, albeit the change is very small, Gray thought while raising his left hand in the air. Since leaving the trial land, he couldn't really say that he had focused on cultivating. What he mainly did was either improving his knowledge in arrays or trying to comprehend a new element. His cultivation stage only increased after he comprehended a new element. Then there was the time he acquired that small ball or red lightning. After he left the Chimera forest, he hasn't really tried to use the red lightning. He still found it odd that he could wield 2 different types of lightning. Although both lightning generally has the same characteristics, there are some changes. Will I be able to wield a different color of flame later on? He thought to himself. This wouldn't be impossible since he could presently wield 2 types of lightning. He threw the thought to the back of his mind. For now, he wanted to focus on how to get stronger. Once he gets to the 9th stage of the Origin Plane, he would have a difficult task ahead of him, getting to the Overlord Plane. If breaking through to the Origin Plane was difficult, then breaking through to the Overlord Plane was at least 15 times harder. An elementalist would have to change their elemental beads into origin beads. This is what gives them unimaginable control over their elements. An Overlord Plane lightning elementalist could easily step into a thunderstorm, controlling part of it. As they grow stronger, their control increases. Gray was barely able to move freely in the direction he wanted, because he noticed the further he headed into the magical beasts forest, the higher the Overlord Plane magical beasts he encountered. Luckily, he had the space element, so evading their senses wasn't too difficult. Although, he wasn't as confident in the space element as he previously did after his encounter with the captain of that group he fought. Since there are people who are sensitive to the space element, then there would also be beasts who would be sensitive to it. On thinking about beasts, he recalled how all the bunnies from that garden were able to hide from Void's attacks, even though he was using the space element. It didn't take long for Gray's fear to materialize into reality when he was noticed by an Overlord Plane beast. Boom, bang, crap. It'll be difficult to escape if it doesn't stop, Gray complained after barely dodging an attack. He had refilled the essence needed for the blue vest to work, so it helped him block the after effect of the attacks that the beast sent towards him. Roar! The lizard-like beast pounced on Gray. Its speed was not something someone in the Origin Plane could deal with. Even with Gray's incredible speed, it was still impossible for him to escape from it. The space element was the only thing that was keeping Gray alive. Now he knew the difference between an Overlord Plane elementalist who just broke through, and one that has been in the plane for a long time. This lizard was still in the early stages of the Overlord Plane, yet it wouldn't have any problems with killing that young man Gray fought against, who just broke through to the Overlord Plane back at the Chimera Forest. Boom! The lizard sent out a fire attack while swinging its tail in Gray's direction. Gray blinked and disappeared from the attack was going to hit, appearing almost 10 meters away from where the lizard attacked. Huh! Damn it! Gray's pupils dilated when he saw the lizard appearing within a few meters away from him. It swung its tail towards him. With no other option, he hastily set up 3 defensive walls, each made of 3 elements, the fire, water, and earth element. He also went on to create an earth armor around him just for a little more safety. Bam! Bang! The lizard's tail didn't meet any resistance with the first wall, which was made of ice. than the one made from fire. It also didn't meet too much of a resistance with the earth wall as well. Swoosh! Gray was sent flying when the tail made contact with his body, which was covered in earth armor, as well as the blue vest protection. Crash! Bang! He crashed into the ground, sliding into the ground for almost 20 meters, before slamming into a 6 meters thick boulder. Crack! Cracks appeared from where Gray's body crashed with the boulder, before running to the other side of the boulder. It was soon divided into 2 separate parts. Gray hastily stood up from the rumble, his earth armor cracked on almost every possible place, while the light the blue vest was giving off was starting to fade. What's happening? Why are the beasts this far out? He mumbled to himself. Overlord plane beasts weren't supposed to be in this area. Yet, not only are they in the area, but there are seemingly countless Overlord plane beasts. Even while trying to evade them, he was still noticed by this giant lizard, which had legs that were longer than how the legs of a lizard should be. The lizard charged towards him once again. It clearly wanted to kill Gray for stepping into its territory. Chapter 435. Boom. Bam. The lizard continued attacking Gray. It couldn't really be counted as a fight since it was a one-sided trouncing. The space element could do so much, and due to him not having a high mastery of the element, he isn't able to cover a large area. Bang! Gray crashed through a tree, breaking it in half. His body was sore from the attacks of the lizard, and even after trying to escape, the lizard continued chasing after him relentlessly. I'll have to take it to the area occupied by another Overlord plane beast, or else I'm doomed. Gray soon gave up on trying to escape, since he knew it was futile. What was worse was that he couldn't get into the fusion state, since he would need to be undisturbed for at least a minute or so. If only Void were here, then I wouldn't have to worry about who would distract this lizard. He shook his head in anger as he followed the path he recalled there being an Overlord plane beast. He was running hastily while also using the space element to dodge some of the attacks of the lizard. He had tried attacking it with inscriptions that he made during the start of the battle, but the lizard's scales were stronger than all his defenses combined. None of his attacks could even leave a scratch on it, well, except for the darkness element. Due to the highly corrosive property of the darkness element, it can at least cause the lizard a little bit of damage. This has been the only thing that he had been able to use to at least delay the lizard for a few seconds, so he could escape from some situations. The lizard would always try to dodge all his darkness element attacks, while tanking the rest of them. He was starting to get exhausted from the constant use of the space element, and it was starting to take its toll on him. If things were to continue in this fashion, then he would be caught by the lizard. Ellis. The young man with a feminine voice suddenly came to mind when he realized how dire his situation was. Taking out the wooden plaque, his expression turned sour when he saw the distance between them. If Ellis were to start flying towards him even at his maximum speed, it would still take him at the very least 3 hours. There was no way he could survive that long. Damn it, damn it, damn it, he complained before bolting towards where the last Overlord plane beast he sensed was located. He was currently betting everything on this beast, while also taking a huge risk. If the second Overlord plane beast were to join this lizard in attacking him, then he was done for. But since such cooperations were rare among beasts, he was hoping these two would fight it out as soon as they sensed each other. While running there, Gray noticed something that almost made him change his mind. There were multiple corpses on the way, from the wounds on their body. It was evident that they were inflicted by a beast with sharp claws. Boom. Crash. Gray was caught by an attack from the beast once again, crashing forward. But he used the momentum to gain some more distance from the lizard. Blood was already starting to drip from the side of his mouth, which indicated that he had sustained some internal injuries from the multiple attacks of the lizard. It shouldn't be far. Boom. Gray's thoughts were disrupted by the explosion that sounded out in front of him. The sound seemed to be coming from a few hundred meters away, but it was very clear to him. Without even thinking, he charged towards where the sound came from. If it were people who were fighting, then he would try to use them to distract the lizard while he escaped. If it's a magical beast, then it would be better. He would feel a little guilty if he were to use people to escape from the lizard, since he didn't know if the people were good or bad, nor did he know if they had families waiting for them outside the magical beast's forest. Boom. Bam. The lizard behind him continued attacking wildly. Luckily, he dodged this attack with the space element, but with the continuous usage of the space element, he was getting more exhausted. It didn't take up to a minute before he got to where the sound was coming from. In front of him were 3 people who were covered in blood. Opposite them was a huge ash cat. The cat stood at around 3 meters tall with a length of almost 6 meters. "Wow, that's big," he exclaimed on seeing the size of the cat. Growl. The cat turned its attention to him as soon as he appeared, to the relief of the trio, who were almost on the verge of death. It suddenly pounced towards Gray. At the same moment it pounced at him, the lizard appeared and attacked Gray as well. Mustering the little bit of essence he had left of his space element, he vanished. Boom, bang. The cat was sent flying by the attack of the lizard, since it bore the brunt force of the attack. Run. Gray appeared almost 20 meters away, sparkling with red lightning. He bolted for safety. Even though he told the trio to run, he didn't even glance at them while he was escaping. It was none of his business if they ran or not. What mattered to him was that the lizard might be stopped by the cat. He didn't even turn to look at the outcome of the collision between both beasts. The trio didn't stand any further and took off in another direction. The lizard, which was about to continue chasing after Gray, was stopped by the enraged cat. Boom, bam. They soon started battling against each other, just as Gray hoped. But the fight didn't last as long as he thought. Chapter 436. 30 minutes later, a few kilometers away from where Gray left the lizard, Gray could be seen sitting on top of a rock that was close to a river. His eyes were closed as he tried his best to replenish his space essence, which was almost completely depleted when he was escaping from the lizard. Why are the beasts this far out? He thought while trying to stabilize himself. Even when he was running here, he still sensed 3 beasts that were in the Overlord plane. Luckily, he managed to escape before they attacked him. He knew something huge must be going on in the deeper parts of the forest, given how even the Overlord plane beasts are coming to the outer parts of it. Although he hadn't encountered anyone that was at the very peak of the early stages, or in the mid stages of the Overlord plane, he knew if he were to continue heading deeper, he would see them in no time. From the device the last time he checked, if he followed Ellis, then he would be going deep into the forest. Just how powerful is he? He asked himself. Ellis seemed to be in his early 20s, yet he was already this powerful. For him to freely fly deep into the forest is a testament to his confidence in himself. Gray couldn't help but think about how things were in the continent Ellis came from. Thinking about it, he thought of his parents again. If they were from that continent, then there's a chance that they were powerful. Even Ellis was this strong. Then they too should be at least as strong as Ellis, right? But on second thought, he couldn't be certain, since even in a superior place like that continent, there must be people who couldn't really cultivate properly, hence stagnating. What if his parents were one of those people? It made sense since they came to this small place, and didn't even tell him about that other continent, since they were ashamed. Multiple thoughts were running through Gray's head as he continued replenishing his space essence, as well as his wind and lightning essence. Physically, he was tired since he sprinted for minutes non-stop. Had it not been for his regular training in the trial land, then he wouldn't have been able to escape from that lizard. Gray decided to focus on replenishing his essence. He also took out one of those vials, which contained the healing tonic they extracted from the blooming viper, and drank it. Despite the fact that he could heal himself without it, it would take some time before he recovers fully. In a place like this, especially given the current circumstances, it wasn't wise to take such risks. 1 hour later. Wow, the essence here is better than it is outside. Why is that? Gray exclaimed internally. If he were to be outside the magical beasts forest, it would take longer for him to replenish the essence he lost during the escape. But here, it took around 1 hour or so. While Gray was marveling at the mystery of the magical beasts forest, something was staring at him from deep in the water, waiting for the right time to pounce on the unsuspecting Gray. It slowly swam from the depths of the water, edging closer to Gray by the second. Gray suddenly felt a pair of eyes glued to him, but he didn't know where the sensation was coming from. He looked at the forest curiously, but he couldn't find what was staring at him. Strange, he muttered. He stood up and moved closer to the river, looking at the other side of it. Splash! The creature sprang out from the river at breakneck speed, spreading its gigantic jaws as it tried to bite the head of Gray. Gray reacted by taking a step forward instead of backing away. He bent down as he took the step, making sure to dodge the jaws of the beast. His simple movement placed him under the creature, which had over half its body mid-air. Gray looked at the stomach of the creature, his eyes trailing to the other half. That was on its way from springing out of the water. It was surprisingly a crocodile. He didn't know which element it was attributed to, since it hadn't attacked with an element yet. After missing its target, the crocodile continued going forward, its body fully leaving the water. Bam! It landed heavily on the ground a few meters away before turning around hastily, facing Gray face to face. Huge. This was the first thing that rang in Gray's head. The crocodile before him was over 9 meters long, and the size of its head was insane. Even Gray felt a little chill from it. If he were bitten by that head, he would be cut in half, no doubt about that. Luckily, the crocodile was at the peak of the origin plane, and it had not yet broken through to the overlord plane. Get back into the water. No need to die unnecessarily, Gray said before moving to the side. He didn't have the time to fight with this crocodile. He was planning on leaving this place, since there's a chance that the disturbance might attract other beasts. An overlord plane beast is something he didn't wish to encounter presently. The crocodile opened its mouth and sprayed out a stream of water towards him. Gray shook his head before disappearing from sight. He soon appeared behind the crocodile. Holding onto the tail, he began spinning, taking the crocodile with him. The 9 meters long crocodile was lifted off the ground by Gray easily, while it was still spraying out water. After going 3 full circles, Gray let go of the crocodile. It went in the direction of the river, due to the force of the throw. It skipped on the surface of the water 6 times, before crashing on the other side of the river. The river was around 26 to 30 meters wide, yet Gray threw the crocodile to the other side. Well, with the help of the water. Chapter 437. Gray hastily left the area, heading in the direction Ellis was located. Since Ellis has the advantage of flight, then it was preferable to leave the search of the bamboo forest to him. He would explore the forest while heading deeper into it. His present plan was to try to get to the 9th stage of the origin plane, and the best way to do that was through battles or obtaining treasures. If not for the irregularities in the forest recently, then he would have been searching for beasts at the peak of the origin plane to fight against. Looks like searching for a treasure is my best bet, he decided. He started slowly moving through the forest, dodging all the overlord plane beasts he sensed on the way while searching for treasures. Whenever he encounters any origin plane beasts in areas where he doesn't sense any overlord plane beast, who would go all out in fighting against it. Later that day, the sun had already set, and Gray searched for a place to cultivate through the night. He hasn't seen anything of interest since coming into the magical beasts forest, and only fought against 3 beasts during the day, since he couldn't stay for long. He took out the crystal orb Ellis gave to him while sitting in the cave. The orb soon gave off a dim light, and Ellis's face appeared in it. "Can I help you with anything?" Ellis asked. "No, I wanted to see how your search is going," Gray asked. "Well, not so good. I've seen 3 bamboo forests so far, but none has that liquid you're searching for," Ellis replied hastily. Gray noticed Ellis was occasionally looking behind him while he was talking to him. "Is anything wrong?" He couldn't help but ask. "Not really, this is a bad time shit," Ellis exclaimed at the end of his statement before freaking out and glowing with blue light. Roar, boom. "I'll talk to you later," Ellis said before the light in the orb died down. The orb went dark, and the image of Ellis disappeared from it. Gray couldn't help but wonder what would make Ellis look that freaked out. But given how Ellis managed to speak with him even before going off, it was safe to say that he wouldn't die, hopefully. Gray took out the wooden plaque. It was the best way to find out if Ellis died or not. As long as his light dot doesn't move, then it could mean that he was dead. But if it continues moving, then it means that he's alive. On looking at the plaque, Gray was stunned at the speed at which Ellis's light dot was moving. "Okay, he's alive. Guess I should focus on cultivating then. I'll check on him later," he mumbled before shutting his eyes. He had already set up arrays around him, and even went as far as setting an array to notify him if anything were to move within 500 meters of where he was located. That night ended with nothing happening. Gray cultivated all through the night. He would occasionally check the plaque to see where Ellis was located, if he was alive or dead. There was a time when Ellis's light dot didn't move for over 2 hours. Just when Gray was thinking of contacting him, he noticed he had started moving again. The next morning, Gray started moving forward once again. He couldn't stay in one place, and according to Ellis, he would be leaving the next day. If Ellis doesn't find the bamboo forest before then, he would be forced to continue the search on his own. For some reasons though, he didn't feel too confident in being able to locate the bamboo forest. The reason he felt this way was because the forest was just too big. Even if he decided to dedicate his time to searching everywhere, it would take him countless years before he could travel around it. Sigh void. It would be great if nothing happened to you, he thought while walking away from where he passed the night. After walking for a few hours, he encountered people. There was at least a group of 6 or so, and each group contained a minimum of 7 people, and a maximum of 15 people. In front of them was a cave, just like the one he entered with Ellis and that group. The people noticed him and looked in his direction. Luckily, he had his robe on, so none of them knew what he looked like. If they knew he was a youngster, some of them might want to attack him or pressure him to leave the place. But now, they let him be. He stared at the cave, although he couldn't really sense anything inside. He decided to wait here with the others. After all these people wouldn't stay here if there wasn't the chance of there being a treasure here. This cave was also relatively bigger than the one he entered previously. What he noticed was that of the multiple people here, only 2 were in the 8th stage of the origin plane. The rest were either in the 9th stage or at the peak of the origin plane. They must be the top people who explore this place, well below the Overlord plane, he thought. There are also groups in the Overlord plane who come into the magical beasts forest. But since Overlord plane elementalists aren't as many as those in the origin plane, it's difficult to encounter them. Even with the beasts coming this far out, those groups would still venture deeper inside the forest. After almost an hour, the first group walked into the cave. The others stood up and followed behind them. Gray also didn't stay behind, walking at the back of the groups. From their cautious looks, Gray knew none of them had entered the cave before, so they didn't know what to expect inside it. Chapter 438. Gray stepped into the cave while keeping his guard up. He didn't know what to expect here, and there's also the possibility of the people who had gone in attacking him. On getting inside, he saw the groups all standing cautiously, staring at the path that led deep into the cave. He tried to sense it with his earth element. It's not like that one, but just don't think it's any less dangerous, he thought inside. Unlike the previous one that connected to a valley, this one had a series of underground tunnels that led deeper into the cave. Gray wasn't the only one who had noticed this, the others have as well. Now, it was all a matter of who went first. Not just that, but which tunnel they would choose later on. The first group, which was led by an old man with white beard and hair, snorted before taking the first step, followed closely behind by his companions. The first path in the cave led to 3 more paths that separated once again. The paths kept increasing, while there's also empty spaces in some paths. Gray guessed if there was anything in the paths, they would be located in these spaces. After the first group took the lead, the others followed right behind them. Gray didn't go in hurriedly, rather, he waited till all the groups had gone in before sitting down. He closed his eyes and then spread out his spiritual senses. He wanted to see which of the tunnels was less crowded, before picking which one to take. After almost a minute, he realized the one which was chosen by the first group was the one that was less crowded. The reason for that was very simple. The others who weren't strong enough didn't want to offend them. Gray smiled and went into the tunnel. On getting to the path where it was separated, he instantly picked the one in the middle. Before long, he had gotten to the end of that path which had 5 paths. Just like what he did before, he picked the same path the first group did. Some of the groups which followed the first group had started to pick a different path, since there wasn't any use in following the first group when there were opportunities in the other paths as well. Gray didn't change paths yet. He continued following the first group. He felt compared to the others, the first group seemed to have a clear-cut goal in front of them. They didn't take time when choosing a path. As soon as they got to a path, they would immediately take one of them. After almost 20 minutes, Gray was the only one left who was following the same path as the first group. The others have all taken other paths. Sir, that guy in a robe is still following us. One of the ladies in the first group walked closer to the old man and whispered, "Let him come, he'll die even if he doesn't follow us." The old man said nonchalantly, Okay, so, the lady bowed before retreating. The expressions of the others in the group changed when they heard what the old man said. His statement meant that whatever path the others took, they would die in the end. Sir, what are in the other paths? One man asked. Hair, death. The old man smirked as he replied. What about this path? Someone asked curiously. Without me, death. With me, treasures. The old man said confidently. The others looked at each other nervously, but after clenching their fists, they decided to follow him. It wasn't like they had an option anyway. After walking for 10 more minutes, the group stopped, not taking a step further. Gray, who was behind them, knew what they wanted to do but didn't think about it too much. He couldn't stop since that might induce the group to attack him. Hair, since they want to play, then we will play, he thought inside. On the way here, he had noticed some things in this place, and what he guessed was that this place was nothing more than a death trap. Luckily, this group was ahead of him, making the journey easy. It didn't take long before he appeared in front of the group. Hello, he waved at the group. Can I ask why you're following us? The old man asked. Following you. Gray feigned ignorance. HMPH. Stop playing dumb, you wouldn't have a second chance. One of the men in the group snorted. I'm not following you people. There are paths to choose from, and I'm picking the one I feel is safer. Gray said casually. If that's the case, then why don't you go ahead? The old man showed Gray the way while opening a path for him. Okay, I see no reason why you're being fussy about it. Gray nodded and moved forward nonchalantly. The old man and the group behind him were slightly taken aback, given how quickly he agreed to it. They almost wanted to believe that he truly wasn't following them. Well, almost. Gray went forward, a smirk on his face, but his expression soon changed when he walked almost 6 meters away from where the group was standing. He vanished, appearing 2 meters backward. Boom. The place where he stood blew up, lava sprouting out of the ground. The group behind him burst out laughing when they saw this. Gray looked at the lava, unperturbed by it. He walked forward and quickly walked past the side where the lava was coming out from. After getting past it, he soon disappeared from their view. Come on, let's go. He'll help us clear some of the obstacles. But don't be in a hurry in case he accidentally evades some. The old man ordered. The others nodded and followed behind Gray. They were the ones doing the dirty work all these while. Now, they wanted Gray to do it. Just as I guessed, this place is a death trap. These people definitely know how to go through it. If I lead the way, I might get hurt, Gray thought after dodging another round of attacks. After thinking about it was better for him to find a way and get to the back of this group again. Staying at the front wouldn't do him any good. What made things worse was that there doesn't seem to be another path that divided. He continued walking a little further before getting to the place that was spacious. This is usually the place he believed there might be treasures. Because he had been following the group from behind, he hadn't really been able to see anything in the spaces whenever he got there. Okay, I'll take a look first before going to their back, he thought. His curiosity towards what he might get here got the better of him. He quickly started searching before the group would get to where he was located. If there's a treasure here, then the group would try to take it as soon as they came in. The place was around 50 meters wide, given Gray's speed. It didn't take long before he completely swept the area. There were multiple herbs in the area, as well as some rocks. He didn't really look at them and kept them all in his storage ring. After sweeping the place, he started to wait for the group. A minute later, the group arrived. The expression on their faces was one of surprise as well as shock when they didn't find anything there. They had gotten some rewards from the previous ones, so they felt expectant as to what would be here. Where are the treasures? One of the men pointed at Gray. Treasures? Which treasures? Gray asked. What do you mean, what treasures? There are supposed to be treasures in here, the man said. Well, do you see anything in here? Gray asked with hands spread out wide. You must have them. The man pointed at him. Where would I put them? Gray asked while staring at the man as if he was an idiot. Stop speaking, the old man said. The man kept quiet before retreating. What are you waiting for then? The old man asked. I'm resting. I've almost died countless times, Gray replied, before asking, also, why are you people following me? The old man was stunned by Gray's question. This was the same question they asked Gray. Now, he was asking them the question. This is the only path. Why would you think we are following you? The old man tried to defend his group. You're following me. I don't like it. It's either you go through, or you take another path. Gray gave them an ultimatum. You seem to be very confident, move or Edie. A man from the group said. They were tired of the old man's calm way of doing things. Chapter 439. The area turned tense for a few seconds, with both parties staring at each other. Well, the group was winning the staring contest since they had more people, and they were all glaring furiously at Gray. If looks could kill someone, then Gray would have died a couple of times over already. Enough, I'll advise you to keep moving. The old man stepped between the group and Gray before saying, That's impossible. Either we move together or you guys go on ahead. Gray said. The old man thought about it for a while before nodding his head. Fine, we don't have all day. Sir. The others in the group called out to the old man, giving him a questioning look. Don't worry. He has his use. Either him, or one of you. The old man whispered to the others. On hearing his question, they could tell whatever uses Gray had wasn't something that would benefit him. What they found more alarming was when the old man asked either Gray or one of them. This meant that had Gray not come into the picture, then one of them would have been used as a sacrificial lamb. They all looked at Gray with gleaming eyes. It was as if they were staring at their savior. On seeing their gazes, Gray couldn't help but shudder at the thought of why they were looking at him like that. He didn't think the old man would agree to his request that easily. This made him feel he probably had something planned for him, if not for the fact that fighting against this group would be a little stressful, and that he needed them to guide him to whatever they were targeting. He would have killed them already. With the space element, it's impossible for any of these people in the Azure continent to fight against him. Even Ellis, who was familiar with the space element, said it was difficult to fight against space elementalists. His switch skill made him even more overpowered compared to other space elementalists. Whoever made that technique must be a true genius. Luckily, I managed to acquire it, he thought. Gray and the group soon started walking forward. He moved so nonchalantly that the group couldn't help but wonder if he was alright upstairs. A normal person wouldn't try to pick a fight against a group of 9, nor would they travel with the same group he wanted to fight with. They all had the same thoughts when looking at Gray. Either he was very confident in his abilities, or he was a complete psycho who didn't give a damn about his own life. On the way, they soon got to a new divided path. Gray watched the old man, and he saw him taking out something from his clothes. Within a few seconds, he walked towards one of the paths. Who the hell even made this place? He asked, a little tired of the long walk. He didn't understand why people would set these death traps, if they actually wanted people to obtain what they left in the cave. But he found the first cave he entered to be better, since it didn't take this long to get to where the treasure was located. The old man also easily deactivated all the traps in front of them. He couldn't help but think if the old man had come here before, or if he got information about this place from whoever made it. Thinking up to this part, Gray couldn't help but look forward to what might happen. It's definitely a trap, he concluded. Given the intricacy of this place, it was impossible to move through it without the help of the person who made it. After almost 1 hour of moving, they soon got to the end of the cave. A hair-raising chill went through the body of everyone who walked into the final part of the cave. Lava was flowing through the ground. At the center of the open space was what looked to be a temple. Chains and skeletons could be seen all around. There was also a red orb suspended in the middle of the temple, giving off an eerie but hot feeling. We're here, the old man said to the others. What's that? One of the ladies in the group stepped forward to ask. It's something very special. Come on, let's keep going, the old man said before jumping over the lava onto the temple. Gray looked at the orb and couldn't help but find it very familiar. The people in the group exchanged glances before jumping onto the temple as well. Since they've already gotten here, what's the use of hesitating? Just as Gray was about to follow them, he caught sight of something. A thin red line that ran from the walls of the cave, moving into the temple. Looking at it properly, he caught a scent of something he was familiar with. Blood. A blood sacrifice? He asked. He looked at the temple and realized the thin line ended under the floating red orb. That's it, it's an origin bead. He almost lost his footing when he realized what the orb was. Only an Overlord plane expert can create an origin bead. What's worth mentioning is that although some experts decide to leave their origin beads when they die, Most would prefer it dies with them, since they didn't want others to benefit from their years of cultivation. If an arcane plane elementalist were to absorb this origin bead, then he would most certainly break through to the Overlord plane in no longer than a year. Some people would break through to the Overlord plane in 3 months even. This bead could be said to be a priceless treasure. Yet, one is right in front of him. But Gray didn't get greedy in trying to steal. Rather, he sat down crossed legs with eyes glued to the temple. After the others stepped into the temple, they all walked towards the origin bead. After all, other than the skeletons, it was the only thing there. Chapter 440. Old man, what is this? One of the men in the group stepped forward. The man had short brown hair, his eyes filled with bloodlust. The way he addressed the man has changed completely. He used to address him with utmost respect, but since he had brought them to where they wanted, he wasn't needed anymore. Do you all know about origin beads? The old man chuckled as he asked. What? Origin beads? The man who stepped forward exclaimed in shock. He didn't think that what the old man was leading them to was an origin bead. If he were to absorb it, then he would be able to instantly break through to the Overlord plane. That would place him at the top of the world. He wasn't the only one who felt excited about the thought of the origin bead. Haha, to think there's such a treasure here. Since I'm a fire elementalist, it's only acceptable that I take it. A fiery-looking man stepped forward laughing. HMPH, you're not the only fire elementalist in this group. Another man stepped forward. The third person who walked out was the lady who was closer to the old man amongst the group during the journey. You two don't have any manners. Sir still haven't spoken. She chided the duo. What the hell is wrong with you? Sir? Who are you calling sir? This old man. The fiery-looking man asked with a mocking voice. Just like what we agreed from the start. I have a share in the treasure. The old man said calmly. What? You want a share in this? You're already at death's door. Why don't I help you? The fiery-looking man asked while licking his lips. The others in the group burst out laughing when they heard this. If not for the old man's use, they would have killed him right from the start. But on hearing there was a great treasure in the cave from the man, they decided to team up with him. They never expected he would actually believe them when they agreed that he would get a share from the treasure. An origin bead can be absorbed by anyone irrespective of their base element, although it would be better suited for those who have the same element as that of the bead. The old man said, We all know that. The first man who spoke out said while walking towards the old man with a smirk. You see, this bead needs a little more blood, and it will finally get to the level it needs in order to advance. The old man said calmly. Blood? What are you saying, old man? The man paused. Yes, remember when I said that guy was needed for something? The old man asked. The man nodded. This is what it's for. All we need to do is sacrifice him, and the bead will get to its peak. The old man said fervently. The others looked at the bead, then at the old man, before staring at the entrance to the cave. Where did he go? Someone asked when they didn't see Gray there, nor in the temple. He must have run away. It doesn't matter. He will die eventually. The old man said coldly. Since he's gone, what now? The man asked. The sacrifice must go on. Also, just in case you're thinking of sacrificing me, I'm needed to organize the sacrifice. The old man said with a smile. He made sure he would be of use right to the end. There was no way these people could get rid of him. The man paused and couldn't help but look at the others. All 8 individuals suddenly retreated from each other, since they didn't know who would attack them from behind. No need for you guys to be this worked up. We already have the perfect sacrifice, the man said before turning to the lady who was close to the old man. The lady took a step back in fear. Just as she took a step back, her pupils shrunk. She looked down, and an old-looking hand could be seen holding onto a heart that was still beating. The hand passed through her chest, which was bloodied. Blood slowly started to flow from her wound as well as her mouth. The old man who was standing behind her withdrew his hand, and the lady's body fell to the ground with a thud, her blood moving towards the bead. The group looked at the old man with a strange expression, not expecting him to betray the lady that quickly. The bead suddenly started spinning at a faster rate, as it greedily absorbed the lady's blood. Within a few seconds, the corpse of the lady dried up completely. The others stared at the bead, a little horrified by it. Is an origin bead supposed to absorb blood? The fiery-looking man couldn't help but ask. Of course not. But you see, I found this technique that would help me advance. All I need to do is feed my origin bead as much blood as I can. The old man laughed out as he spoke, a different look appearing on his face. His current expression was that of a predator that was staring at its helpless prey. Your origin bead? The man with brown hair asked. Yes. You see, this was all an elaborate plot to get you all here. Although the blood could be acquired from the tunnels, it would be more beneficial when the people were closer to the bead. The reason I picked your group amongst the others was because you people were stronger. The old man answered. His previous demeanor was slowly changing to that of an intimidating person. None of the people here could attribute the present old man to the one who led them here. I still don't understand, the fiery man said. He could feel a pressure from the old man that petrified him. Don't worry, you will soon. The old man cackled. Boom. The fiery-looking man attacked immediately. This is the end of this video. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed and wish you wonderful rest of the day. The silent Ruptors out.